OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
Very good morning. You're very welcome along to Tuesday morning. So OTB AM's Tuesday. Did I get that right? I did think I did. 23rd of May. Very good morning to all of you out there tuning in as per usual in your usual places. OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now. Colin Boohy, good morning.
Shane, great to have you back. I missed you.
I missed you too, as always. And Johnny Ward, very good morning to you. How are things?
Good morning. What happened yesterday morning?
Farcical.
Go on.
It was more so the night before, but car issues. So like people think because I'm from Monaghan, you're obviously a car man, and because I watch Formula 1 maybe as well leads into this false narrative of my life. But I was got my car back eventually from my mechanic Finbar, shout out, yesterday evening in Smithborough in County Monaghan, and I had a few issues the night before, so it wasn't fun. Now it's not, the damage isn't as bad as I had originally feared, so he's sitting there telling me about different things that were wrong with it, and it's straight over my head. I think you're either a car person or you're not. I really love my car and I look after it, but in terms of the specifics and the mechanics of vehicles, I wouldn't be the strongest. I don't know about you lads.
Marion McKeown had an interesting article in the Business Post on Sunday about the car ownership in the States and how cars have become a lot more expensive in the States. The average price for a new car in the States now is give or take $50,000.
Right.
And the average age of the car that you own in the States is something like 14 years old.
Jeez.
Like old. But it's kind of like a part of... Like I've never driven. Like I used
really?
to... No, so I used to, when I was in... before I came to college, when I was, 17 and then 18, I would have had a provisional license and I drove at home. But when I came up to Dublin, I was thinking this the other day, so I'm up in Dublin 23 years now. I've never had a car.
Right.
So it is never in my head. It's like if you've never had a pint, you don't know what you're missing it, because you don't know what it's like to not. You never have to give up because you don't know it. Like, so it just never come into you. But if I have an issue in Dublin, like in terms of how I'm going to get to somewhere, it's just not in my head, so it's not a problem, if that makes sense.
I love the simplicity of having a car. Simplicity, I say simplicity. When things happen to the car and you have to...
Wasn't simple yesterday morning.
Wasn't simple. And it's not always simple, but it's handy. I love driving.
But it's incredibly inefficient when you think about it, right? Because cars, give or take, spend 95% of their time doing nothing, right?
Yeah.
So how have we allowed this to happen, where, like, should we not have a system where you can get a taxi straight away cheaply, or you can rent a car cheaply, because 95% of the time cars are doing nothing? Like, that, it couldn't get less efficient.
Well, the problem is the public transport from, say, for example, from Monaghan, from where I'm from, isn't fantastic.
There's no option for you.
Like, I literally have to...
Can I just bring you through my personal heartbreak about the whole story?
Yeah.
You had to
Shane, myself and Ger on Sunday were chatting through, like, very excited about the performance rankings, weren't we? And the show in general at large. Everyone was happy out, and then I wake up to a red light emoji, which, in fairness to you, was a great warning about what was to come.
What time was that?
5:20 a.m. And I sent it like very he sent it when it actually happened, but of course that's when I saw it. Yeah. And I actually stared at it in disbelief for a few seconds, thinking, I don't actually think this is real.
That's
it's not the same without you.
That was the purpose of the red light. I was like, this is pretty serious.
An audience needs to see this immediately.
Yeah, this is.
And look, we suffered for it. No Shane Hannon of a Monday morning.
People.
Thankfully, look, we have you back, and not just back, but in the big chair.
In the big chair. I mean, what a way to start the week, lads. Yeah. Well, for me to start my week. Sorry to everyone who's already had their week. Big game last night.
Yeah, JP Wright, voice actor, straight in there in the live comments. Newcastle back in the big time, first time in 20 years after a 0-0 draw with Leicester last night.
Amazing what some Saudi money can do.
Well, it's amazing what Eddie Howe can do.
I'm only being a little bit.
It's not a great squad on paper.
It's not. Eddie Howe has done a fantastic job.
It's a good team. It's a good squad.
Yeah, to get Champions League. I mean, that's...
Yeah, first time since Bobby Robson days.
Is it right?
Yeah, 2002, 2003. when they had a really good side. Remember that? The Craig Bellamy and Kieran Dyer and Shay Given.
Oh yes, and they were all over Leicester, like 77%.
Destroyed them.
It's only like at the end Castagna has the shot and you're like,
it's one of those old games of Football Manager, Championship Manager, where you're dominating the opposition, except in the game Castagna's volley at the end would have gone in and you would have like exited the game without saving it, because that can't be real. It has to be a glitch in the system. But Newcastle hit the woodwork 3 times last night. They've actually hit the woodwork 24 times all season, which is 5 more than the nearest side.
Is it? Yeah.
So imagine how much better they could have been again. Like, they have third in their grasp. They could finish 4th. It doesn't matter these days because the top 4 automatically qualify. Back in the day it was top 2 and 3rd and 4th had to do a qualifier, but it's relevant now. So hence the celebrations last night. But a 0-0 hammering it was for Newcastle over Leicester. And for Leicester, you fear for them. But it's all very finely poised for the final day of the season. 4:30 kickoff this Sunday. I love when they all start at the same time. I love the kind of no homework Friday feeling of these last games of the season, where it's always sunny. Teams wearing their new jerseys. It's all a bit of a laugh. Just kind of like a game of Astro. No one's really defending. A lot of 3-2s, 4-3s.
Go for broke.
A lot of games you never see. They're like mythical. You never see them once. Like, if there's nothing to play for, like, what's the 10th game on Match of the Day? But there are going to be 3 brilliant games. And also, if Manchester United don't get the job done against Chelsea on Thursday, that could also go down to the wire between United and Liverpool for the final Champions League spot. But you have it all poised with Everton against Bournemouth, Leicester against West Ham, and Leeds against Tottenham. So they're all at home.
So Everton 33 points, Leicester 31 and Leeds 31. So we were just saying this morning, so if for Everton, even though they're 2 points ahead of the drop zone, a draw wouldn't necessarily do against Bournemouth, because if Leicester were to beat West Ham, their superior goal difference to keep Leicester in the Premier League. So
their goal difference, Leicester's -18, which is far superior to the other two. Everton -24, and Leeds, who are really in trouble, -27. So Leeds are 19th, Leicester 18th, Everton 17th.
Jesus, that's going to be tense. So who are you backing? Deitch?
I think Everton will stay up. Look at the size they're playing. So Bournemouth, nothing to play for, but that could help them. They express themselves. West Ham have a cup final coming up, Europa Conference League against Fiorentina, so they could field a relatively strong team. Could be competition for who's going to start that match, so that could be an interesting game. Spurs, you just have no idea what they're going to do. Haven't a clue.
How can you trust Spurs?
It does statistically make a huge difference that a team has nothing to play for. It's a massive difference. Even last night, Newcastle, like, I actually backed Newcastle to win the game last night. Didn't see the game on a flight. It was just like but they didn't need to win the game. And that ultimately at the end you could see they were kind of like they were happy enough with the draw. And in Leicester's first shot and goal was after about like 85 minutes or something, literally first shot of any description. But the fact that, as Colin says, 3 teams the opposition have effectively nothing to play for is massively important in the narrative.
It's mad that all those 3 teams are at home. The relegation teams
and
are all at home.
They could all win. Like the 3 of them could all win, because it is junk time. West Ham aren't going to be anywhere near their best. Like, it's simple as that. Like,
to be fair, if Leicester and Leeds both win, they still can and still go down. That'll only put them to 34 points off the magical barrier of 40 that does not exist. That seems to be the one to keep teams up. But it would be interesting if Leicester and Leeds lost. All of a sudden Everton stay up on 33 points. So
I don't mind if Leicester go. I'd rather see Everton stay up. I assume, I'm just going into this assuming Leeds are going to go.
I was chatting to a couple of Liverpool fans last week who wanted Everton to stay up. I know there are plenty of Liverpool fans that'll probably enjoy the prospect of Everton being relegated, but I think from a rivalry perspective,
Jamie Carragher said,
are they Irish people? See, if you're an Irish person, Everton was never. I was a Liverpool fan. Everton was never a thing.
If you're Scouse, maybe you're more.
And Carragher is an Everton fan growing up, and he said it would be pretty funny. He said if they got relegated, and that's Carragher saying.
How can he say that?
And he said just for a year, and then they come back the following season with the new stadium. And then they replenish. He said if he could guarantee it was only for a year that they were in the Championship, he'd take it.
But he supported Everton growing up, and he thinks it'd be funny if they went down.
Do you know, it's strange as well, like the Manchester City and Newcastle thing, where you have all this petrostate money, I derive no enjoyment from what Man City are doing, but in fairness to Newcastle, like, Eddie Howe really hasn't actually splashed that much cash. It's a football mad place. The atmosphere in St James is still amazing, and he's done an amazing job. He really has. Like, and where do they go from here now? That's interesting. Like,
very far.
Are they the new power? Like, who finishes? My brother reminded me actually at the weekend that apparently I said Liverpool would struggle to finish in the top 4 after the Fulham game on day 1.
Right.
I don't remember saying that, but thanks to him, because it's probably the only thing I've literally gotten right all season.
Yeah.
Where do Liverpool go relative to Newcastle now? Like Newcastle's going to become such an attractive proposition for players. Like,
absolutely, yeah.
And Eddie Howe is an exceptionally good manager.
That's the thing, and you say correctly, that Newcastle haven't really splashed the catch too much, and neither have Manchester City in recent times. The difference is with those two sides versus the other 18 is that they can spend all the money they want to if they want to, if they choose to. So they always have that in the back pocket. They can always panic by Robinho style if they wanted to, but they don't need to. I mean, Eddie Howe, I think he prefers that type of squad, and they could build on that a little bit more. But those players are all like it. They have such an attractive squad even from a business point of view for the owners, because there's a lot of players there that you could sell on for decent money if you wanted to
make a bit of profit.
It's a decent age squad as well.
Yeah,
there's a few areas that need to strengthen.
100%. The Bruno Guimaraes tackle last night on Samari.
Well, it just kind of goes back to the whole lack of transparency in the decision making.
So he gets a yellow.
He gets a yellow. If you look at it technically, it studs onto the knee and it stays there for a split second longer than it needs to.
It definitely stayed there.
Yeah, and it's kind of a red card 101 if you were to do and examine the players that should get sent off for tackles. It goes back to the problem, we don't really know why they decide certain incidents. And I'm the biggest purveyor of players need to show way more respect to referees, and I hate when players go into refs' faces and F and blind them out of it. On the other side, I think refs need to communicate better
with players. Yeah.
No, with the
with the VAR.
Well, you see, if I always compare it to rugby unfavourably in that the communication rugby is fantastic. There's still problems the odd time with players and refs, but generally speaking, the ref explains the decision, we all hear it. Yeah. And then the player accepts it, even if they disagree with it.
We spoke to Finney Perth about this last week in the League of Ireland. Every week we seem to be talking about refereeing decisions.
Yeah, it's not that interesting a topic either. Do you know what I mean? But it is. But you're right. It's like people are obsessed with it.
But that mutual respect thing is important, because obviously referees and players both swear back at each other in every league. Yeah. That's just what happens.
But I understand from when you're actually at the stadium, you're watching the matches. It doesn't make a difference. You're not going to be able to hear it anyway.
Yeah.
But I just think there's a long way to go in football between the relationship. There's a lack of trust, which I think is a good example there in that incident where Guimaraes could have been sent off and he wasn't, and we're guessing as to why.
You'd like to hear the
next
logic.
Morning.
Would you like to hear the logic in an NFL sense, where the referee presses a little button and speaks to the stadium and tells everyone, holding, Guimaraes, not dangerous, yellow. I don't know. I don't know what the solution is, but
the referees always seem to be mid-70s or really old in the NFL. It's proper, they're real old school. They've been there, and you just wait for those boos to come in from the.
Yeah.
But it's strange in the sense of the last 12 months we've had the World Cup with what seemed to be an experiment on at a time, an absolute experiment, and then you've had a complete change in the way VAR is implemented since sort of the end of last season at the top level, and where it's kind of strange now, because Liverpool had a goal disallowed on Saturday. I watched the game against Villa, and it was a really tough call, and it kind of justified VAR in a sense. But when the ball went over the line, it was as if the fans were kind of celebrating but half not celebrating, and it took probably the guts of 2 minutes for it to be disallowed. And I'm just that spontaneity being gone is not fun, really.
No,
it's just I don't know.
Suck the joy out of sport in some ways. But then again, if they come to the right decision at the end of it, then that's fine. JP Wright, voice actor, Shane really needs to work on the American accent. No better man to tell me that. I thought my American accent wasn't too bad. I didn't give it my best there, but
I'd like to hear some samples from JP Wright.
Yeah.
Could you send us in a few?
Yeah, 100%. Let us know what I'm doing wrong there.
Can you add on your point there, Johnny? At the moment, I think Klopp is still a more attractive proposition for most players than Newcastle.
Yeah.
How long will that continue?
We'll talk about Caoimhin and Kelleher a bit. The Klopp rebuild is definitely interesting. I didn't expect. I actually thought he could be gone at this stage. Or certainly gone at the end of the season. But in fairness to Liverpool, they finished the season well. I still think there's so many holes in that team, though. So many holes, particularly midfield. I mean, 4 players are going? 3 of them are midfielders.
Bit of turnover.
Yeah,
it feels like the start of a new era at Liverpool in a weird way. Even though Klopp's still there, obviously, but just in terms of the turnover personnel, when you see the likes of Firmino leaving, you're like, this is the end of an era in some senses. You mentioned Caoimhin Kelleher, Johnny. We might as well touch on that story, because I know Andy Jones is writing about it in The Athletic as well. I couldn't believe when you said this morning, Colin, that like 3 games this season he's played.
Yeah, 2 in the EFL Cup, 1 in the FA Cup, and I suppose more appropriately only 20 competitive games since 2019.
That's featured in, isn't it? Like, so, and they're competitive games. A lot of them are kind of competitive, but they're competitive with a low C. Like,
he's 24 now. He had that amazing moment in last season's EFL Cup finals, like scoring the winning penalty, which is incredible. What a penalty! I mean, like, and he's such an interesting background. I mean, a player who played as an outfielder for quite a long time before he transitioned into a goalkeeper, like for Ringmahon Rangers and Cork. It was only because they were short of someone in goal. Yeah, and he was a goal scoring forward for his club, hence the penalty against Chelsea in last season's decider. So
the contrast with Bazunu is so like it's so pronounced. Like, who wakes up happier this morning? Bazunu's like, we've gotten relegated. My stock has kind of gone down a bit.
But Bazunu's out of the team now. Alex
he's out of the team. He's like, he hasn't played for 4 or 5 games. McCarthy himself hasn't been great either. Like,
he wasn't great for Ferguson's first goal.
No, he wasn't great, and he gave the ball away prior to that. But Kelleher's stock has just been kind of static. Where I honestly don't know how good he is. I really couldn't tell you.
That's what you're saying beforehand. It was like, he's kind of like a mythical figure, isn't he? Like, we just don't have enough sample size of Kelleher.
A bit like Shane's car, actually.
Yeah, a mythical figure.
Haven't seen much of it.
I don't know. Kelleher, like as we were saying, Klopp was saying recently, it'll take an extraordinary offer to.
As recently as last Friday.
Yeah,
he's not worth extraordinary money. It's not. It's not there for Kelleher to be worth a lot of money.
Extraordinary.
He's played 20 games since 2019.
Yeah.
What has he done to suggest that he's worth extraordinary money?
As Kathleen pointed out beforehand as well, like, that quote could be very deliberate by Klopp saying it will take an extraordinary offer, i.e. he is for sale, so if you want to pay for him. But then, as Emma pointed out beforehand, it's very tough to get a quality backup goalkeeper who is willing to stay there and learn from a world class goalkeeper.
It's different to the likes of, say, Manchester United, who have Jack Butland, who's an older, more veteran goalkeeper as the number 2, probably quite happy at this stage of his career to get the odd game. Kelleher's 24. Like,
it just goes like, I mean, do you really need a quality second goalkeeper? Like, Neil Warnock used to be a big man for having no goalkeeper on the bench. Phil Jagielka used to be going in the sticks for Sheffield United.
Too far the other way.
But like, you're never really going to hit that sweet spot of having an absolute quality, proven goalkeeper who's on the bench for the entire season, who's more than happy to do so, is still motivated not just by the money but the opportunity, and that's why the Queeving Kellehers of the world are so rare. But like,
by any metric, what's he worth? Like, if Liverpool are in a bargaining position, it's impossible to say.
In this day and age, you don't know. Like, is he worth 20 million?
If he went for 10, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah,
if he went for 35, I'd be like, yeah, fair enough. Because you're buying the potential. Like, he's 24, which in goalkeeper terms is younger.
But you can't pay 35 million for a goalkeeper. Like, what has he actually done? Like,
I'm only saying 20 million. Moments. He's only 20 million because of his age profile. He's 24,
and that's young, still young to be a keeper.
Yeah, but you don't just splash the cash because a player's young. Like, he has proven
he's shown in big games as well. In the very admittedly few big games that he's played for Liverpool,
but even for Ireland as well. Like,
he's really good with the ball at his feet. And I think the one thing with the Liverpool situation, I've always defended Kelleher. I think in terms of his development, being coached at Liverpool must be so good for his development. And I know he hasn't been in that many pressure situations, but he's probably developed into a very good keeper, particularly with the ball on the ground. Like, he's better than Bazunu, 100% better than Bazunu with the ball at his feet, and that's massive. Like, so he has all that going forward. He has the confidence of Jurgen Klopp, and he has the confidence of Jurgen Klopp. I just don't know how good he is. I honestly don't, because I've seen. Like,
well, we do have a little bit of.
You mentioned the
a few
Cup
examples.
Yeah,
the League Cup, but also, like, I've seen moments where he's very solid, and actually don't. And I do think that as a compliment, because you don't say that much about modern goalkeepers.
He's solid
in that his handling is actually very good.
Do you remember one like remarkable save he's made for Ireland yet?
But that's what I mean. I don't think
he's been called into
but I think his anticipation is such that he doesn't need to make remarkable saves. Like, I say a modern goalkeeper now, cross will come into the box, fits to the way, could easily catch it, fits to the way. Now, that itself is effective because you're fitting the ball up 40 yards up the pitch. But Kelleher, there's a different style to him where I suppose it's kind of GAA related a bit, in that he's catching the ball very solidly, and doesn't need to do anything extraordinary, which kind of seems to match his personality and demeanour. Very calm, gives very little away.
Well, I said it after.
Atypical for a goalkeeper.
It is. I was behind that goal when Ireland beat Latvia 3-2 in that friendly where Queeving played recently, just before the French game, and like, I don't think Queeving could have done anything about the Latvia goal. Certainly one of them was a screamer.
One was a deflection.
But I remember his footwork wasn't great
for the screamer.
Yeah. he didn't get over fast enough. I think he went with his wrong hand as well. You know, me saying as the expert, like, but it looked like, you know, he could have gone with his nearer hand.
My issue with Queevy that day from watching him behind the goal in the first half was there wasn't much in terms of communication. He wasn't as vocal as I'd like a goalkeeper to be.
All right,
even in Sunday League level, you want a goalkeeper who's
annoying you,
wrecking your head.
You don't.
Oh well, not sorry, but
those keepers.
You don't want it, but it's helpful.
It actually helps. As long as I think it helps if you're a defender.
It depends what they're saying, but yeah.
True, yeah.
The other thing you should say is, like, he's been very unlucky that Allison hasn't been unlucky, if that makes sense. Kelleher could, by the grace of whatever you believe in, had a lot longer run of games, and Klopp, I think, would have entrusted him. He would have. So he was probably gambling on, I'm going to get a really good chance here. Didn't quite happen for him, but I think he does need to go now. I really do.
He probably was gambling on Allison having a poor season or a few mistakes, but he's arguably been Liverpool's player of the season. Allison's had ropey spells at Liverpool, but this season he hasn't. Like, he lost his dad as well, and he came through that, and this season he's been outstanding, like, in a very, very ropey defence at times.
Put it this way, if Allison was to leave Liverpool suddenly, I don't think Klopp would make Kelleher the number one. I still think
I tend to agree with that.
And if that's the case, then he does need to go, unfortunately. But his education has been phenomenal. Playing for one of the best managers, and you're under one of the best goalkeepers.
Yeah,
but
concerning.
I suppose he has to graduate at some point.
See when he decides to leave. If he decides to leave, that's the purpose of that piece in the Athletic, by the way, that Queevy Kelleher appears himself ready to move, albeit Klopp saying that'll take
sorry as well, Shane. You imagine when he signed that deal, there's some understanding with Liverpool that they're not going to stand his way if he gets whatever Klopp says. I mean, let's be a little bit fair to the player here. He's been a good servant, he hasn't jumped ship, he's been a loyal player who hasn't been playing, and if somebody comes in, I mean, Brighton
seems to be one of the teams that's just near mentioned.
Pretty cool. Just like, you know, the Brighton Irish Revolution and all that.
Shout here on YouTube, Kenny the Dad suggesting Nottingham Forest as an option for Queevy Kelleher if Keylor Navas moves on, which he might do.
Possibly, yeah.
And was it Brian here as well in the comments? Bazunu's stock has tanked. Big summer for Kelleher's Ireland prospects. Bazunu and Kelleher, like, they'll be, you know, brothers in all of this.
Yeah. Because they're both having a poor enough time.
Zuwantanehu.
Oh, I love that's the Shawshank Redemption reference.
That's what they'll do, you know.
Don't know where
Gavin will be like, I'll see you there. And Queevy will be coming up with a bag, be like, Gavin, I'll come back again.
Red is somehow...
That's the place in Mexico where they decided to meet on the beach.
You know, I was wondering about that.
It is a bizarre analogy.
You know, I wondered about that.
That scene.
He says it once to him.
Yeah.
Once only.
And he still remembers.
And it's like, I remember that,
but, sorry, he said it once only. We see in the movie, they don't show everything in the movie. So there's loads of moments where they talk in the movie that we don't see. Like,
let's assume.
I mean, they're in jail for about like 3 decades together. It's a 2-hour movie or whatever it is. Like,
you've got a point.
Say what today? It begins with Z as well. Like, so.
Got a very.
That is a bizarre.
That's what they'll be doing. Yeah.
Okay, but
no, they'll be united there.
But
stick with it.
Which
don't
beach
worry.
is it? Bettystown. What beach is there? What's the Zed Wantanehu for?
Stick with it
for Ireland. What beach are Bazunu and Kelleher going to meet? I don't know. This is we've gone too far maybe.
But they'll eventually be. I love God, what a ride that was. What a ride that was.
It's a good little documentary. You know, the two of them meeting together on the beach.
Isn't it? Yeah. It's the Sexton and Raj of the football era.
Yeah. One of them's on a boat waving like.
Yeah. You know this when I'm talking about here the Sexton documentary about 10 years ago when their time in France coincided and they had to carpool into training. Sexton and Raj.
Oh yeah.
And they became buddies.
Yeah.
I'm not saying, by the way, that Bazunu and Kelleher aren't friends.
I'm sure they are.
You know.
But it's also Ireland. Like, it's, with all due respect, it's you're playing sporadically for your country. You're playing for your club.
It's true.
Every week. And Kelleher has had Irish opportunities. Like, say what to Neo.
Yeah, what a reference. Yeah. Anyone let us know what's your favourite quote from Shawshank Redemption? What's your favourite scene?
I would be here all day.
It's every GA player in the country's favourite movie.
Okay, I'm not even going to comment on that. That actually makes sense. Yeah, no comment. You're supposed to be the overseer of the show.
Yeah. It's an inside joke. The Ireland women's national team are going to play their first ever game at the Aviva Stadium. This was announced yesterday as well, against Northern Ireland. So this is the opening UEFA Nations League game, Group B1. This is going to be on Saturday 23rd of September, 1 o'clock kickoff. So it's the first game after the World Cup in Australia, New Zealand. Of course, they've got those friendlies at Tallaght Stadium against France and Zambia before the World Cup. I mean, it's exciting. Good that the Irish women's national team are getting the opportunity to play in the Aviva Stadium. I think they're going to have one of the tiers open, possibly. An earlier kick-off to bring more fans down from Northern Ireland as well for it. You could get a decent crowd. especially, it'll probably be dependent as well. They're probably leaning into the World Cup and that post World Cup good feels hopefully to get a decent crowd. But yeah, Ireland Zambia 22nd of June, and then Ireland France on the 6th of July. France 5th in the world ranking, so those are the two games.
Yeah, it's such a shame. Well, it's a little bit of a shame that those two games, or at least the France game before the World Cup, isn't at the Aviva Stadium. But look, Tala's been very good to the Irish team, and like there'll still be a huge crowd at both Zambia and France games. But like you say, Shane, they're 5th in the world, France. It'll be great to kind of attract a big crowd at the Aviva. One last send off before they fly to the other side of the world and start their inaugural World Cup campaign. But look, it's something also to look forward to at the other side of the World Cup, because let's be positive here, it could be a very good World Cup for Ireland.
Touch wood.
And the homecoming then against Northern Ireland, First Nations League game at the Aviva Stadium, something to look forward to in September.
Get a bit of an atmosphere.
I think both like Vera and Stephen Kenny, just in terms of timing and the games Ireland have next month, it is quite complex. Like when you've lads who are finished the season, some of them are mentally finished the season like for a few weeks, and then they have to prep for this game in intense Greek heat probably, like, do you know what I mean? And it's like, even though they're in Greece, in their own mind they're like, I want to go on holidays now. Players have ridiculous rosters now. I want to have my holidays, I want to get off. Yet Kenny has to kind of keep them in a happy place for what's a massive game, like. And with Vera Pauw as well, the timing coming out of the season, we spoke about this, like coming into the World Cup, it's very, very difficult, like. And if you look at things in hindsight afterwards, you'll say, well, that would have been something that's really hard to manage, like. So especially going down to Australia as well.
Should mention that international against the North will be touched on in the Koi Gig pod, which is out this morning. There's also an exclusive interview, very exciting this by the way, with the WSL Player of the Year nominee, Manchester United's Ona Batiai, which is really, really pertinent at the moment, because trying to decipher whether she'll end up at Manchester United or Barcelona or somewhere else next season. So certainly an interview that a lot of people are looking forward to. So the Koi Gig pod out this morning in all the usual places.
Maybe she'll end up and say what's an ale.
Well, someone here suggested, is Mark Travers the prison warden?
Oh, yeah.
What was his name?
JP's on the forum here. What, the prison warden?
Yeah.
Warden.
He sneaks it. I remember the scene where Andy Dufresne sneaks into the office and plays the song.
Yeah.
It's like Kelleher would sneak into the office and play "You'll Never Walk Alone" or something off the speakers.
I think it'd be more of a Bazunu thing to do.
Maybe a Bazunu thing to do.
Yeah. And like if you I don't know if the three of them had some sort of challenge, like the guy who had to, forfeit or who lost would have to just go through like a hell of amount of shit for like a long time and
cleaning the other side.
Yeah.
So I don't know how he built that tunnel.
It's pretty incredible. Started off with
I know it is incredible. I mean, it's borderline unbelievable that you'd be able to do that.
I almost say it's unbelievable. You almost say it's like
it's so
fiction.
clean.
Yeah. Very clean.
It's a move. I remember when I was like used to collect match programs as a kid, and like you'd have a Q&A with the player of whoever it was. What's your favourite movie? Shawshank Redemption must have been. I'd say about 66% of the answers. Like
I know, and like it's very predictable, but it's outstanding.
Boring answer, but it's a brilliant movie.
Just one more there. John Daly, full-time appointment. St. Patrick's Athletic.
Yeah, like it's strange the way things work. John Daly was brought in by Tim Clancy with the view to being his assistant, but also John Daly would have told Tim Clancy, I want to be a full-time manager, but not at St. Pat's. I mean, but I suppose it's an unwritten understanding, because I'm at this point there are a lot of exciting young managers in the League of Ireland, but they can't all succeed because there literally just isn't the options for them to succeed. You have 4 places in Europe, you have 1 team winning the league, yet you have all these clubs kind of battling for that, and Tim Clancy was sort of the first. Colin Healy's gone as well, but Tim Clancy was the first sort of casualty. It was interesting. I spoke to John Daly after the Shamrock Rovers game last week, where he made the point that Pat sort of let Clancy go, or whereas it was supposed to be mutual, and apparently they did kind of have a conversation. Right. But we'll figure out more down the line what actually happened there. But I know past managers have found the club not the most straightforward to work at. That's definitely true. But John Daly has gone in there now with his eyes wide open. He knows how the club works. He knows the potential of it. Great crowds at Pat's. It's in Dublin. There's a great vibe around the club. I think their training facilities are good. And I watched them against Rovers last week. They were really, really good for much of the game, and I think John's family is still living in the UK, I think.
Right.
So he spent time in Sweden and the UK with a view to this. He's a hard enough guy to really get a handle on. I've only spoken to him a couple of times. Very, very mannerly, nice guy. Quite intense, I think, and it was interesting. He, like, after the loss to Rovers, he called out one of the defenders, like, by name,
right?
Which I think is interesting, because that's kind of an Eddie no for me. So he's not afraid to take any crap, but the players seem to have bought into him at a very early stage, and I wish him the best. Big job, and yeah, he's gone in with his eyes wide open anyway. But like, you see, I mean, that some of the young players Pats are bringing through are outstanding quality, like should be in England except for Brexit, and that's a fascinating aspect of it as well.
Will Derry win the league?
I think Shamrock Rovers will win the league, but Derry have made it interesting. They've had a couple of injuries, serious injuries, that have curtailed them. But I mean, I back Shamrock Rovers to beat Drogheda on Friday. Drogheda had 2 points from their last 21. Drogheda beat them, and you see in this league that you can't take your foot off the gas. Rovers were very good against Pats, won on Monday, and then lost at home to Drogheda, who are effectively relegation candidates. So it's a tough league. I think Rovers have the quality though, and the squad and the know-how, but it's a 2-horse race.
Before we finish up, we'll be moving to James Tracy and the Leinster reaction from the Heineken Champions Cup final defeat to La Rochelle at the weekend. But I did want to mention a bit of cycling. I know Shifty Lad in the comments was asking about the Giro. Eddie Dunbar, by the way, Cork man. They're all from down in Cork now. Call him the great cyclist. Currently in 8th place in the Giro, so he's only 3 minutes and 40 seconds behind the French race leader Bruno Amirai. So the 3-week Giro heading into the final 6 days from today, looking to become only the 3rd Irishman to finish in the top 10 in the Giro after Stephen Roach won the course in 87. Dan Martin took 10th a couple of years ago. So it's really heating up in the Giro d'Italia. One of those sports cycling that hasn't got as much probably publicity in the last couple of weeks as it could have. Ben Healy won the stage last week. I was watching the Ross Talton live in Monaghan coming in. There was an unbelievable buzz in Monaghan, lads, the weekend for the Ross Talton, and it had almost gone under the radar for me. I forgot that it was coming in, and it was the second last stage, and like
that's where you really were.
Yeah. Well, actually, it was Saturday. It was Saturday.
You hung on.
This is
watch the best bits.
Car disaster. But and again, from Cork, Dylan Corkery, a 24-year-old from Banteer in County Cork, went into the final stage in 7th overall, 19 seconds down on the overnight leader, Conor McGoldrick, ends up winning. I was keeping an eye out for James McEnany from Carrick Macross, the Monaghan cyclist from Monalty Cycling Club. But to see what the marshals do, the safety and the speed that they're going past. Darragh McKenna from the Emmy Vale Cycling Club looking after the safety of the marshals and riders. I was buzzing watching it. Like these lads go past you.
It's phenomenal, and like I think the one thing that was great over the lockdown was that so many people took up cycling, and it's become Ireland has massive advantages when it comes to cycling that people don't understand.
The hills are just
the hills, like from like even say where I live now, you're at the bottom of a really nice climb in about 4 or 5k. The one negative of Ireland is it's quite windy, but other than that the conditions are excellent, and it's become a really cool thing now. Like I think we could become. I think a lot of young Irish cyclists are going to be born out of the last sort of few years.
Cycling mecca.
Yeah, and like it's we definitely underappreciate and then the scenery and all that, and the quality of the roads around the country, and that and then obviously you have Strava as well to compare yourself to your mate or whatever.
It's in Tour de France 1998. Prominent childhood memory. So I was laughing there. Tender Chicken 56 in the YouTube comments. Kelleher, get busy living, get busy dying on the bench in Liverpool.
Yes. That is the great quote, isn't it?
Why did you bring in Zaywa Taneo, by the way?
It was a great analogy. Fantastic.
A to Z.
We'll move on. 3 minutes past 8. Loads.
Interesting too.
I don't know where that reference came from, but I'm here for it. We will talk Brighton and Evan Ferguson later in the show with Andy Naylor around 8:25 as well. We'll have the sports news. We'll have Grainne Walsh, the Irish boxer, who's over in Poland at the moment. She'll be reflecting on Katie Taylor's defeat at the weekend. I just so naturally say Katie Taylor's win. So much. Well, it's usually what I'm saying.
On Katie Taylor, by the way, very brief. Like Katie Taylor usurping Sam Bennett for the Sports Person of the Year that year.
Yeah,
just shows how people are so utterly ridiculously blinkered by the power of, say, women's boxing versus professional cycling, which is insanely difficult. And he won he was his top sprinter in 3. He won the green jersey in the Tour de France, possibly won. He had an amazing year anyway.
Wouldn't have fancied
and he just because it was cycling, people didn't appreciate it. So hopefully that'll change.
Sure. George Dockrell as well, the Irish cricketer, will be on the show around 9:10 as well, talking mental health supports in cricket. Don't miss all the action in Rugby Daily today in our OTB Podcast Network, bringing you everything you need to know about rugby. It's all in partnership with Deliveroo. Deliveroo has some great bundles and deals, so open the app, make your choice, and watch your rider come to you. Deliveroo food, we get it. After the break, James Tracy live in studio.
The Sports Breakfast Show from off the ball. OTB I came to hit there just so I was on the man and back before we hit him. And he was hitting over fire with one for me to go on the wrong pitch. Maybe not sitting world like the way on the back post and definitely something needed for every game. Subscribe to the OTB podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
5 minutes past 8. We haven't all turned into robots on this Tuesday morning. That noise you heard was clearly some gremlins in the system, and we don't all sound like that. James Tracy's in studio. He doesn't sound like a robot either. Good morning, James. You couldn't hear that, by the way, but the ad break was just all sounded like a robot, so it wasn't great. How are you feeling? You're a couple of days out now. Has it all kind of...
It definitely hurts, but I think objectively you look at it, and it was an incredible final. Like talked about it, hoping it lived up to the quality of players that were going to be on the field and the hype, and it really did. I think there was it was a lot of spice in the occasion. The quality of rugby was off the charts, and just unfortunately I think everyone would have enjoyed it unless you're a Leinster fan, because we just come out the wrong side of it.
It's so funny because the margins are so tight. Like, were you surprised by the tactics towards the end not to not go for the drop goal? But I mean, they had those number of minutes where they probably, I'm sure, prepped for that potential scenario where you're a point down or a couple of points down with a few minutes left, but clearly they felt like they had the time to maybe wind down the clock a little bit and go for the try.
Yeah, I back it 100%. And I think full credit to both to Josh and to the sub hooker for Sclavy. He both so Josh, it's championship minutes to win the European Cup, and he nails the throw, top of the jump, and and they get in within a few metres, and listen, full credit to La Rochelle, the defender for their lives, and there was even an opportunity down the short side with I think it was Baird and Gibson Park, but again it's the attention to detail that the top teams have of the disruption, and it was Skelton in that ruck, and it was taken, Johnson had to hit the ruck because he was counter-rucking. He was taking about 3 lads to stop him, and that's the difference. If he doesn't put that ruck pressure on, Jamson sees that blind side, and it's a whole different kettle of fish. And in terms of the kick, like, there was a lot of time you could see spent, because there was a player leaving the field or whatever. You could see Ross testing the wind, and clearly he knows his own range. He's kicked on that field I don't know how many games, so back the decision 100%. And unfortunately it's one of those ones where if you score, you're a genius, and if you don't, 2020. But listen, full credit to La Rochelle. They showed incredible resilience. I think to go 17 points down and without even throwing a shot in a final, and just to keep their cool, and it really, in those championship minutes at the end of the first half, and in the last kind of 10 minutes of the end of the game, to come up with 2 huge scores, I think showed that's why they're a double champs.
Are teams kind of is it kind of part of the makeup of possibilities to do the drop goal now compared to other years, where you have so many bonus points now, and it's kind of gone out of the game to a large extent? You think back to Michael Kiernan compared to now, where a drop of goal wins you the game, whereas now it's you rarely enough see it actually in games.
So my take on the drop goal scenario was, so it was never, they almost scored every single time they carried, so it wasn't as if okay, we're not getting anywhere here, just build it closer to the posts and we'll dink it over. It was like every time they came open, there was a big opportunity on the blind side, and they almost scored again. So it was like, almost, you're in the moment. You're not thinking, okay, there was no moment where it was like, okay, we're not going to score here, let's just set up the drop goal. That just never happened, and before you knew it, the moment was gone. And a couple of centimetres higher or lower in a clear out, and it's a different story. It's a scrum, and I'd back Leinster to score off that scrum. And listen, that's the fair play to them. You have to take your hat off to them. They were under the pump, and they showed up, and it still wasn't done. They had 2 lineouts to nail both of those to the tail. Shows incredible bottle, and as well calling it to the tail when the game's on the line. You're winning by a point. You're 20-30 metres out from your own line. And there was air pressure there as well. It was Ross Mullaney was right up in the air. So unless they were top of the jump, they weren't winning the line out. So listen, you just have to admire their steel and guts, and again, I talked before about, and loads of people talk about nailing the basics, and that's it. It's your throwing, your lift, your jump, the timing, the call. At every level, that's applicable, and when it matters most, you got to nail it, and they did. So fair play to them. Yeah, and that, as you say, that try just before half time felt like the turning point in some ways. That just maybe gave La Rochelle a little bit of hope at half time, where they're only maybe 9 points down. That start by Leinster, especially the Dan Sheehan try early on, when you get to 17-0. I heard yourself and Quinny chatting to John after the match in the Aviva, and was it just that Leinster were mentally exhausted at the prospect of being so far ahead of La Rochelle, that this game is not won, but Jesus, 17-point lead has never been lost in a Heineken Champions Cup final? So was it a psychological thing that maybe they were thinking, okay, well, we've done a lot of the effort now, we can pull back a bit, or was it just a case of they were out on their feet because of the level of exhaustion it took to get to that lead? I felt when both teams came out, they were spent. I felt like it was such an intense first half that both teams really looked tired. But at the same time, I don't think that was, it wasn't one been more tired. I think La Rochelle are an exceptional team. I think they were always going to have purple patches. And in fairness, there was a lot of really, really important turnovers. I think Charlie Natai at one point, you had Dan Sheehan in the corner, you had Josh van der Fleer with multiple kind of maul turnovers. But they were relentless in coming back. Every time we cleared the ball, they were putting kick pressure on. We weren't getting amazing exits. Then all of a sudden we're back under the cosh again, and you're dealing with these unbelievably big powerful ball carriers, and that we all of us knew that was going to be the case. Leinster would have known that was going to be the case, and they did a great job of starting the game and sucker punching them with a few early tries that were unbelievably well executed. But they were always going to have a period of scoring, and the frustrating part is you're the breath of wind, or a few inches off in a clear out, or off of the champions, and everyone's going on about how great you are. But again, it's I can't explain how much I respect how hard it would have been to go into that changing room after been pummeled for the first kind of 20 minutes, and they had 2 opportunities really, and they took both of them. Dante's first try was just incredible, power of the man, absolutely huge. And you got to give credit to Doolan as well. He goes in scrum half, and that's not an easy scenario when you're on the right side of the pitch, because you're most likely going to have to play open. So you've got the opposition scrum half beside you, and you're coming back this way. So it's way more pressure than if you're on the other side. At least you get to kind of hide behind the number 8 and play out. So all these little things of that's not just an easy thing to do when it matters, when the chips are down. So you have to give full respect to all of the La Rochelle players when it came to execute little things that were even outside of their job, that they did it when it mattered.
We'll get into some of the intricacies of the performance, but there was so much, even after the match, the different narratives off the pitch that had happened, even at half time. The reports that Sean O'Brien had been standing there kind of almost to block Ronan O'Gara's access to the referee, happened apparently in the previous final last year. You had Ronan O'Gara after the game saying that La Rochelle were treated as the little team, and then the pre-match toss, incident, I guess, if you want to call it that as well. So James Ryan accused of disrespecting La Rochelle during the coin toss. So Gregory Aldred had said from the toss already we were not respected, and that should not be done. There are a lot of values in our club and respect is part of it. And then Raj backed that up and said, yeah, I got word of it down in the pitch. Obviously I have a close relationship with my captain. A bizarre action when they were going for the toss. I originally thought that James Ryan had been accused of avoiding eye contact, but then Aldred, I think afterwards, had said he had eyeballed him, so he'd done the opposite and he'd given him maybe too much eye contact. But that sort of thing, I guess, is part and parcel of top level sport, that maybe players or captains are trying to get in each other's heads before a match. It's marginal gain stuff.
I've never heard of anything like it before, but listen, it's how he felt. So yeah, listen, that sort of stuff, like at the end of the day, it's all just lip service. Like
it's irrelevant at the end.
Yeah, like it's what happens on the field is the main thing, and it's like it's exciting to talk about, but in fairness, all that mattered on the day was what happened on the field, and talking about James Ryan, I thought for his 29 minutes that he played, he was unbelievable. He was big, but you lose your captain. If they lost Aldred, it would have been a huge loss for them. So there's no denying it, but I don't think it was as if Jenkins didn't do well when he came on. I thought he did decently well, but James is probably in the form that he was when he burst onto the scene again, except he's bulkier and he's more physical, so it's just a shame that he didn't get the opportunity to see out the game. And you never know, he came up with a huge turnover early on when just prior actually to Dante's try, La Rochelle have a line out in the corner and set up a maul on Skelton, and James Ryan breaks through the front seam, comes up with a huge steal, and unfortunately we knock it on instead of exiting, and they were the kind of the little things that kind of helped or hurt us in the end, where it was every time we do something good, we'd follow with a mistake. Not every time, but at a couple of important times we come up with a huge turnover, and we'd follow it with a mistake, and you just can't keep giving the teams as good as La Rochelle access without they're going to score. They convert too many to give them that sort of territory, and listen, as I said, Doolin did exceptionally well, and dealing with the pressure of being 9 and Jamson giving them a bit off the back of the scrum, and Dante finishes it unbelievably well, and listen, that's all she wrote. I
don't want to dwell on the off-pitch stuff, but it is as you say, interesting to talk about, and it leads us. It's stuff that we don't, as members of the public, even think about before the game, because we're not involved in high level sport to that degree, so we don't see this sort of thing, and we don't think about it maybe to an extent. But even the comments from Roger after the match, that little team comment that I said, so he says, I think we're in Lansdowne Rugby Club, we couldn't get a room in this place. It's disappointing on that front, but we've got to accept that we're seen as the little team, but that's about to change. What did you think of Raj after the game, talking about Leinster and the little team stuff and the eyeballing and the, I guess, the off pitch stuff?
That's how he feels, clearly, and Leinster were in the RDS because it's the Aviva and the EPRC who decide the post-match function stuff, and they wouldn't have had rooms big enough for either of them. But listen, that's how he feels. So he's entitled to say what he wants to say, and he was clearly very passionate about a few different things. But I know from our end, they were the championship team coming over here. There was no little team. Little and La Rochelle don't go in the same sentence, I don't think, in a lot of people's minds. But listen, that's how he feels, and listen, he's the 2-time champion now, so that's how he wants.
Where does he rank in terms of Irish coaches already and what he's achieved already? Like,
he's an incredible coach, and he was an incredible player as well. And like you can hear from the interviews post game from the players that like they're unbelievably bought into the culture that he's curated in La Rochelle. So
how difficult is that in a foreign country as well, where like it's not even your natural language that you're trying to see at half time? What do I say to these lads?
I've no experience in it, but I can imagine all the different cultures, the different language, like so many like variables there that would make it very, very, very difficult. So like it's a testament to him and his coaching staff of what a job he's done. And I think even his he focuses on, we talking to the French media back in French out of respect. It's his attention to detail in those little things that I'd say would build kind of admiration and respect from his player group, and the fact he clearly he really cares about them, and that's the sign of any good coach I've ever had, is they actually,
it's not contrived, like,
yeah, exactly. And you feel that you know the difference between a coach that actually you go to war for them, a coach that actually cares for you and gets the group galvanised, and he seems to have clearly done that.
We might touch on some of the positives, I guess, from Leinster's perspective, which we should, because as we say, look, this is sport, and was only a kick of the ball between the two teams at the end, same as last year. We could be talking so easily about Leinster being the back-to-back Champions Cup champions. The guy at Ringrose at one point, he's shouting "breathe," and you can quite clearly see it in the television. And Robbie Henshaw is probably one of Leinster's most impressive outlets at different points, and I suppose the loss of him possibly impacted Ringrose as well. So we're talking about the loss of James Ryan, but Henshaw as well was so crucial to everything good that Leinster were doing.
Yeah, he was unbelievable. Like I think it was Aldridge got man of the match. Like Satini, like he probably had two of the biggest moments in the game. That try before half time and the line break at the start of the second half that got them like their momentum right back going again for them. That's kind of like when you've gone in for Leinster, it was like they needed to score first, or needed to have the first kind of like big moment.
Yeah.
But Robbie, like Dan Sheehan, Josh van der Fleer, like Caelan Doris, you could pick like 5 or 6 players on the Leinster side that had like 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 performances, but you had the same on the La Rochelle side, and they just, as I said, took their opportunities very well, and there was a point in it at the end, and just sickening to be on the wrong side of it. But on the flip side, what an amazing comeback, and they deserve all the plaudits they're getting.
And even the clever lineouts from Leinster's perspective as well, like that as we mentioned, the Dan Sheehan try early on, just wrong-footed La Rochelle straight away. And I think Rog even said after the match, he said we would have been so proud of that try if it had been us that had come up with that.
Yeah.
Andrew Goodman's fingerprints probably on top of a lot of those things as well. Just there's little special teams moves, I guess, from Leinster in the match early on, especially, where like this is brilliant stuff.
Yeah, it's a combination of Ross Mullaney, it'd be Rob McBride, it'd be Andrew Goodman. They'd all have put their own flavour on different ideas and hash them all out. And listen, again, it's executing it when it matters. So it was an incredible try, and Jack Conan's timing going through, and Dan's he's like a winger as well as a hooker in terms of his pace and his power. So I thought he finished his second try even better. Like the pass from Gibson Park's obviously unbelievable, but he still has a lot to do there, and he's got I think it's Rule and Aldry and Bouguerie closing on him. But the point being, like, they're quick guys to get to you, so you got to be quick to get to the line for the corner, because they've got the angle on you. And he just finished it unbelievably well, and he's such an asset to have for Leinster and Ireland. Having him, on the edge, it's literally like having a giant winger.
Could he change like how young people look at, could I end up in this position? Because look at him, like, I mean,
I don't know if you could end up there.
Not me or you, Johnny.
The royal we. Yeah. It's mad though. Like, it's like he's so quick. Like, it's like.
Yeah, and like, so in terms of like numbers, he'd be probably in like the top like 6% of the group, including backs of pace. So you're talking like proper top end speed. But yeah, listen, I from when I even started the game and to now, is like the kids coming out of rugby clubs and out of school are just at a different level, because the emphasis and the pathway of what it takes to become a pro, and the extra work you have to do, and all the different things, and also the environment. It's like the kids are just getting better, so they're just making other kids better around them. But to answer the hooker question, like, it takes all sorts, you know, like the Dan's a certain type of hooker, Ron's a certain type of hooker, like Bugarit's a certain type of hooker. It's whatever kind of strengths you can bring to the game, and you know, like, and then if you suit whatever way the team plays. But yeah, we're just lucky to have kind of two, you know, they're both very good, probably a little bit different in what they're good at, so like that's great to have those options for Leinster, and yeah, like, and Ireland as well.
Leinster will obviously be hurting in the group, not just from last year but from this as well, and the nature of the defeats. But then I guess you look at the age profile of the squad, you look at the likes of Jacques Nienaber coming in, you know, if you have a world class defence coach coming in, fixing maybe some of the small issues that are there, you'd imagine the next year or two will still be very, very prosperous years from Leinster's perspective. They just need to get over the line in those finals. Yeah, I
don't think that group is going anywhere, but it's just, you know, I'd feel for them so much. The pain of losing the final is just incredible. It's brutal, and you know, it's everyone, it's families, it's everyone who feels it. But you know, the reason why it's so special to win and why it means so much is because it's so hard. And you look at La Rochelle and their family and kids running the pitch, and Ron Agar and his mother, and like, those special moments live with you forever. And that's why you play the game. But sometimes you have to go through a crazy amount of pain. Unfortunately, the weekend was one of them, to build your way up to finally get over the line and take the learnings from those really, really hard days. But it doesn't make them easy.
If O'Gara did become the Ireland head coach in time, is there any sense that he wouldn't be able to be as good as an Ireland manager as a club manager? Does it matter at all? Like, when you're not there necessarily day to day?
No, I wouldn't think so anyway. I think the fundamentals of how he's built the culture within his team, I don't think that there's, you know, it's kind of like, once you have the blueprint for it, it'll be obviously, you know, he's probably a harder job of getting all of the different cultures and everything singing off the same hymn sheet and motivated. So no, I think he'd have absolutely no problem. He'd probably excel as Ireland coach, but we've a pretty good Ireland coach at this moment in time. So does he keep building what does he do going forward now? Like, how long does he stay in France? Oh God, I've no idea. But like, if you're winning, you know, why stop a good thing?
Seems to like living over there, seems to like the culture.
Yeah, like judging from what he's saying anyway, he's and what he's doing, and clearly with that group of players, I don't see why he'd leave anytime soon.
I was reading a piece, I don't know if you saw it yesterday, in the Irish Independent, from Rory O'Connor, where he was talking about I guess that psychological side of everything as well. And there was an interesting line where he said Cullen might start by tearing down the images of past success that dominates the walls of their UCD base, of diffusing the importance of the stars on the jersey, because rather than be inspired, the players looked like the enormity of what was on the table spooked them as the game went on. Like, there's all that talk about the fifth star and the psychology of winning, and was that in any way related to the second half performance, or the enormity of what was about to happen, as Rory says there?
No,
nothing to do with it.
No, like, we talked about it earlier, you know, and like, listen, he's that's his opinion and he's entitled to that opinion, but I don't agree with it whatsoever. Like, if that was the case, they wouldn't have had that first half performance, because it would have been too big for them, and they would have been in the shells and all this sort of thing. The Rochelle are an unbelievable side. They're reigning champions. you know, they were always going to have a purple patch, and their purple patch was just slightly better than ours, and that's unfortunately all it is. And that's like, sounds like very general. We've gone through the detail mostly of how they did it, but like, you can, you know, try come up with different reasons and ways and everything like that. Like the 5th star thing, it's just, it's a phrase. There's no, like, you know, mad thing about it every day. Like, it's not something that, like, it's
not hammered home consistently.
Obsessed with. Yeah, it's just like, it's the next one that we can get. So, like, that's what, you know, and we want to win a European Cup just as badly as everyone else. So that's what we talk about, because if it was the 4th one, it'd be the 4th star. You know, it's like, it's an interesting take on it, and listen, he's entitled to whatever take he wants, but I definitely wouldn't agree with it.
Is there any sense that they, week to week, they don't have many close games, where, like, they're not really in this situation very often? They're steamrolling teams week in, week out much of the time. Then they obviously lose to Munster, but this situation, they're not in it very often. And maybe is there a psychological thing when James Ryan goes off and they lose that, like, try before half time? They're like, we're not really used to this mental pressure, or is that just when they lost by a point?
Oh yeah, I think genuinely, I think it's just the latter. I think
they lost by a point.
Lost by a point to an unbelievably good team.
If they won by 2, it's like, yeah, they won the game, they deserved it, you know. Yeah,
they were the best final ever from a Leinster perspective. But, like, I'm sure all the people on the port are like, best final ever from a La Rochelle perspective. It's just, we're sitting on this side, and it's just, you know, like, everyone is entitled to their own take on it, and when you lose, you just got to sit there and take it, and that is just it. So it's just tough. What
did you make of we invariably talk about refereeing performances after a final, regardless? I think Johnny Sexton maybe made a beeline for Jakob Piper after the match to have a couple of words maybe on some of the decisions. How did you feel he fared overall? I
wouldn't have any complaints. Like, I feel like both teams were pushing the boundaries, you know, when it really mattered, and really competing hard at the breakdown, and I've no complaints.
This conversation came up last night on Monday Night Rugby, where the question, are Leinster overrated or underrated? And it's a mad one. It's like, after all the success, and you're seeing pieces in the newspapers talking about Leo Cullen, is he all of a sudden under pressure to deliver the Champions Cup again next season? You know, 2018 is a bit of time ago, but not that long ago, I guess. But from a Leinster perspective, with that star-studded squad, is there pressure? I know there's pressure going into every season, but is there added pressure now?
I wouldn't say potentially there is added pressure. There will be added pressure, but there's always pressure. It's like, once you've won a couple, and like La Rochelle will have that same pressure now, you know, and they're now the double champs. So, like, you know, everyone is expecting, you know, unless they win it next year, it's a failure from their point of view. But the same expectation is set in Ireland, because we've been doing so well with, you know, the majority of these guys in green shirts, and we've as a Leinster team played well throughout the year, and, you know, our expectations are to hopefully win a trophy at the end of the year, and that's what we start out to do every year. So the pressure's on us all the time. But
I suppose in terms of Leo Cullen's playing and coach career, where does this rank in terms of, like, stomach, gut crunch? Like, this is just tough to deal with.
It's up there, yeah. But, you know, Leo talks about the times when, like, they couldn't even get a win, you know, and like, the struggle that they had to go through then just to turn the team around, and the journey he's been on with Leinster from donkey's years ago. So it's this different. There's always pressure, and there's always scrutiny when you don't win, and rightly so. But listen, this team will dust themselves off. It'll take, you know, weeks to kind of get over the pain, and it never leaves you, the pain, but it'll take weeks to turn the page, and you know, they'll go away and refresh, and some lads will go into pre-season for the World Cup, some lads will go into pre-season for Leinster, and unfortunately you got to wait a year before you can try and change history. But it doesn't get any easier, unfortunately, because that La Rochelle team are probably going to get better. You know, the likes of Toulouse are probably going to get better. You know, everyone gets better. So that's the hard part, and it's just tough to
I am actually struck by your use of the word pain as well, because a lot of people who are not into sport to be like, he's waffling here, like it's just a game, you know. But obviously you mean it.
Yeah, well, you pour your heart and soul into it, and like, you know, if you were I don't know, you're at the game on the weekend, like you look at the parents section on both sides, and like, you know, like that's your child, and like they're literally, you know, in tears for
grown men.
Yeah, for grown men, and they know, because they pour the sacrifice that goes in, like everything you put into it, and listen, that's
you lose by a point.
You lose by a point, but you play it because you look at the La Rochelle family, and they're having the moments of their life, and that's what you play for. So you just got to take the good with the bad, unfortunately, and it does mean so much. And I guarantee you would have seen the same pain from that La Rochelle team if we'd come up with 2 more points, or 7 more points, or 5 more points.
It's going to be an exciting year next year, and you even see the South African teams getting better as well and getting more financial firepower. So in every sense, rugby is just getting closer. So that gap between Leinster and the rest, not just in this country but elsewhere, has clearly narrowed.
Definitely, and I'm like unbelievably excited by how good and competitive the URC is. I think like there's some proper teams in there now, and like they're going to start kicking on in the Champions Cup as well, and it can only be a good thing having loads of class teams playing week in, week out. It'll bring more viewership, it'll bring better players, it'll just raise the standard. So I'm excited by all of that.
Great stuff, James. Brilliant analysis and insight as per usual. Thanks a million for popping in.
Thanks, well.
Great stuff. James Tracy there, reflecting on Leinster's Heineken Champions Cup very narrow defeat to La Rochelle at the weekend at 8:35 AM on this Tuesday morning's OTBAM. We're turning our attention to matters Evan Ferguson, because the hype train does not stop. We're not going to get too carried away over in this country, but delighted to say Andy Naylor from The Athletic joins us on the show this morning to touch on Brighton and Evan Ferguson and other issues as well. Andy, good morning. How are things?
Good morning to you. Very well, thank you. Looking forward to Europe.
Absolutely, yeah. It's exciting times for Brighton.
It certainly is, yeah. Qualifying for Europe for the first time in the club's history, and it's going to be the Europa League rather than the Europa Conference League, because they have such a big goal difference advantage going into the end of the season. So although they're not mathematically guaranteed Europa League at the moment, 6th place, that's what it's going to be in reality.
We did want to talk to you about our own Evan Ferguson. We mentioned him at the top of the show as well today. He scored another couple of goals at the weekend. He's someone that every time we talk about on the show, Andy, we get a little bit of slack for maybe bumping up the hype train a little bit too much. But what's the vibe around Evan Ferguson in Brighton?
There's no doubt about it. He is a really exciting prospect. The way he's come through this season in his sort of first proper season in the first team, 10 goals in 22 outings, which is pretty impressive at the level he's playing at. The most prolific teenager in the Premier League, 18 years of age. What I really liked against Southampton on Sunday in particular was his first goal, which was an important breakthrough. And it was just the shot, 15 yards out, angled drive, didn't think twice, bang. And it was actually the velocity of the shot that, Alex McCarthy, you could question the Southampton goalkeeper, but when you look at it again, I just don't think he was expecting it to be hit as hard as it was. Yeah. So he's just got no fear at all, Evan. And then for the second goal, really good work by Kelleher and Bazunu, another of Brighton's young stars down the left, and he was in the right place to put it away. So he's made a really big impression with not just goals but just his all-round game.
He does seem to have found that happy place between no fear and almost humility as well. Like he's
absolutely, yeah.
And I know Shane has interviewed him. I've never interviewed him, but he does come across as this guy that is absolutely soaked in confidence, but there's no real. He's not arrogant. He's he just seems to have gotten that balance, maybe.
Correct. Yeah, very humble when you speak to Evan. there's no cockiness about him. No attitude. I think a lot of the praise for that perhaps goes down to his dad, Barry, who of course was a player, central defender. I'm sure he's getting a lot of good advice from his father and the people around him, and indeed at the club, the way he's being handled by the club. You've got Roberto De Zerbi, his head coach, who's looking at it not just for the now, but for what's ahead for Evan. Hence, when he had this ankle injury against Chelsea recently, there could have been a temptation to rush him back, but they didn't do that. They waited till he was properly okay again. He's got Danny Welbeck there, a great example, a great role model for him to work alongside. So, he's very much got his feet on the ground. I don't think he will get carried away in any way by the noise around him in Ireland.
I got a good bit of slagging recently. I was saying that I think I essentially said I think Evan Ferguson's play outside the box, like Hannon and Ferguson do have a couple of things in common, that both their dads were professional footballers. I don't think that should be understated, actually. I think they were probably brought up in a different way to like your average kid, because I guess if you're a dad and you played professionally and you see your kids showing early promise, you can kind of throw the whole kitchen sink at it. And if you have two like big lads and athletes that they were, but I suppose the point I was making was that I think he doesn't get enough credit, Evan, for the quality of his link-up play and his hold-up play outside the box. Would you agree? And I guess what does he have to improve on?
I think there's areas for improvement on that, but he's learning. And what's really fascinating under Roberto De Zerbi, I mean, Danny Welbeck says he's learning, even with his wealth of experience, the clubs he's played at, because Brighton don't really play with what most people would recognise to be an out-and-out number 9. It's almost kind of a false 9. So they drop in quite a lot. The forwards drop back into midfield, linking up the play. That's very much part of De Zerbi's method. So there's quite a lot of that, yeah. And I guess there were sometimes areas I can remember in one of the recent games, Roberto, as he often does, turning around in exasperation when Evan on one occasion was a bit loose in possession. He does that with everyone, Roberto. People get a bit confused. His passion on the touchline is not directed at officials usually. It's directed at his own players when they're not quite as precise as he'd like them to be. But he's in a great place to learn. He's in a great club to learn. You look going forward that he'll get European experience now, which can only benefit his development.
What's he worth, Andy?
What's he worth? It's very difficult to put a figure on it. Obviously, at this stage, I would immediately. You're probably talking. I don't know what Brighton would want him. I think what we've got to bear in mind is strikers, forwards who score goals always come with an added premium. To put a figure on it, but if we're talking about what he could become, then we could be talking huge figures. We're looking at a club that have got two midfielders in Moises Caicedo and World Cup winner Alexis McAllister, who could, if they're sold in the summer, fetch between them in the region of £160 million. Evan, and let's stress, it's still very early days, but if he maintains his development, he'll be getting into those kind of high figure fee brackets.
It's interesting, Andy, because he signed this new contract, long-term contract with Brighton until 2028. Does that tie things up for him for the next few years at Brighton, or do you feel that clubs will be sniffing around? Because there's been rumours of Jose Mourinho being a massive fan of his, and rumours of AS Roma coming in for him. I know he's a Manchester United fan from when he grew up as well as a kid. So does the contract tie things down for Everton for the next year or two at the Amex, do you think?
I think it's a combination of those things. Yes, it shows his level of commitment. It shows the club's belief in him, and also it protects their interest in terms of interest externally, which there will be, and there will continue to be. I've no doubt about that. I'm sure we'll see stories linking him with clubs in the summer. I don't see him going anywhere at this stage. I don't see him going anywhere soon. I think he knows, the people around him know, he's at the perfect club to develop. If we look back at his decision to join Brighton, there were lots of big clubs interested in him. He went for a trial at Liverpool, Everton, Celtic. He chose Brighton because he could see the pathway, and here he is, 18 years of age, getting regular first team involvement in probably the biggest and toughest league in the world. So I think he's in a happy place, and I think he'll stay in that place
It's also,
for a while yet.
It is interesting that what you say, because I got that sense from speaking to him before as well, that he was very grateful to Brighton and the work that they've done in improving, his little skills. We talk often about his physicality just because of his size, I guess, but as you mentioned this morning, Andy, like his finishing technique and little things like that as well. And also, I guess there was a little bit of fear, maybe certainly for myself, when Graham Potter was leaving Brighton, and I was thinking, Potter's been very good to Evan Ferguson. He brought him into the first team squad, but that transition from Potter to De Zerbi for Evan Ferguson was seamless, which speaks volumes about the player as well, I suppose.
Absolutely, yeah, and I don't think you were alone in fearing that. I think there were a lot of people who wondered what was going to happen when Graham Potter, who'd taken the club from a bottom six club, they were bottom six in his first 2 seasons in the Premier League, to 9th last season, goes to Chelsea. Roberto De Zerbi, who, the club knew what he was all about, but probably a lot of people wondered who this guy is, didn't know much about him, but we've seen him take the team on further, improve them further, improve individual players with his coaching and his methods and his belief. And I think we've seen that with Evan. He's just grown and grown and grown this season.
What's De Zerbi's stock actually as well? Because if you look at some of the basket case appointments that top Premier League clubs have made, either in the interim, where does he rank now? Well,
you have to say what an inspired appointment, and it's not by accident, this, because Brighton, this is their way under the owner chairman Tony Bloom, beg your pardon. They're very forward thinking.
He'd like being called Tony Bloom, I think. That's kind of got a nice ring to it. Probably call his next horse that.
They're very proactive. They're not reactive. They think ahead. They plan for everything, whether that's losing staff, and they've lost a lot of staff in the last 12, 18 months. Losing players, and they've lost some key players in the last 12, 18 months. But there's always something in place. And with Roberto De Zerbi, they knew about his work at Sassuolo. They knew about his work briefly at Shakhtar Donetsk. He was their number one choice, and it's proved to be, as I said, an inspired appointment when you look at where he's now taken the club. That style of play they have, of playing out with no fear at all. You can only see a sort of bright future ahead.
It's funny as well, that must be important for Evan, Andy, in the sense that he's playing at a club that from the top down, if Evan were thrown into a so-called bigger club, but a club that's kind of all over the shop, that could really stymie his development.
Absolutely. And I think the other key thing you've got to remember, and there have been many examples of this in the past. Let's just say big club X comes in, loads of money, hypothetical world, he went. He would not be getting the first team opportunities he's getting at Brighton, and that's what I'm talking about with that pathway, that clear identity that young players can see that at Brighton I've got a real chance of progressing and developing and getting first team football. Not often, very rarely the case at bigger clubs that happens. More likely to be playing in the under 21s, going out on loan. So that will come. It will come. That if he continues his development, if he continues to progress, that will come naturally. Anyway, he's only 18, so there's no rush. And I think he knows that. I think the people around him know that. The club know that. So, as I said before, I think he's in a really good place to develop his career.
even holding on to. You mentioned, Andy, of course, Caicedo and McAllister potentially could be out the exit door. We'll wait and see across the summer. Quick two-parter for you. How important is it, even for from Evan Ferguson's perspective, that Brighton hold on to Mitoma, because he's been crucial to the club this year? And also, secondly, the João Pedro arrival from Watford, a £30 million striker, will that have any impact on Evan Ferguson?
Well, two things. Let's take Mitoma first. I don't see him going this summer. You can never say never, but I don't see that happening this summer. I wouldn't anticipate movement beyond Caicedo, McAllister, and possibly goalkeeper Robert Sanchez, who's lost his place to Jason Steele, and is not particularly happy about that. Mitoma, again, fantastic breakthrough season he's had. But I think, and again, there's plenty of clubs that will be looking at him, watching him, but they'll probably want to see what happens, because I think the challenge for Kelleher and indeed Evan is the next season. You know, these breakthrough players who people don't necessarily know much about, people know all about them now. So it will be interesting to see if they can continue that progression next season. So we'll have to wait and see on that, but I don't see Mitoma going. I'm sorry, I've now forgotten what was the second.
Sorry, João Pedro's arrival from Watford.
Of course,
Would that have any impact?
Yeah. Well, I think this is part of the process. Brighton and De Zerbi's spoken a lot about this. During the run-in, they've had a really congested spell of fixtures, and against big teams, big games. They've had injuries, and it's caught up with them a bit, the sort of 3 games a week scenario. They're going to have that a lot next season in Europe. Obviously, you're playing regularly to start with, sort of Thursday, Sunday. So he's spoken a lot about the fact that they're not used to that, and they need to get used to it. So they need more. They need a bit more depth. They have got quite a lot of young quality depth, but they need a bit more. And you know, they've made their intentions clear with João Pedro. £10 million more than the club have ever paid for a player. So they don't routinely splash out huge sums, transfer fees. 21-year-old, real kind of typical Brighton identity in terms of the type of players they like. Brazilian forward, can play in quite a few different roles across the front line. And obviously that adds, from Evan's point of view, that increases the competition for forward places. But I think he'll still get plenty of opportunities. You know, domestically, they've got Premier League, Carabao Cup, FA Cup, then Europa League on top of that. So there will still be plenty of opportunities for him, I'm sure.
Just briefly, Andy, sorry, this is the thing as well that I often fear for players in general, young players. The schedule is absolutely basket case. Now, Evan has to come off like a fairly hectic schedule, playing Man City tomorrow, but then he doesn't really have a rest, because Ireland are in action in a massive qualifier soon against Greece.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you've got the international element as well. But we've seen that with, let's not forget, 8 Brighton players went to the World Cup. The likes of Mitoma, McAllister, Caicedo, Pervis Estupiñán, Ecuadorian left back, who's another player who's had a really impressive first season. So they had a lot of players at the World Cup, and I think people have lost sight of that sometimes in the recent run-ins, when some individual performances have perhaps not been at the level we've come to expect, and some of the team performances haven't been. A lot of these players are a bit drained, frankly, both physically, but as much as anything mentally as well. So you would like to think, you know, that goes back to my point about De Zerbi and the way he's handled Evan. You know, he's managing him carefully. He's managing his minutes carefully, because he knows this is not just about Evan and Brighton now. This is about his long-term future too.
Andy, great stuff. Thanks for joining us this morning.
No problem at all. Good to speak to you.
Brilliant stuff. Andy Naylor there from The Athletic, talking Brighton and Evan Ferguson and De Zerbi and all else besides it. 8:53 approaching on this Tuesday morning's OTBAM. Delighted to have Cathal Mullaney in studio with us. Cathal, sorry.
Yeah, we've had this conversation. Yeah, we've had this conversation.
What the hell is that?
I think that's an
Ulster pronunciation.
Cathal.
Yeah.
As opposed to Cathal. So you take Cathal.
Cathal, yeah.
Had this discussion before.
West of Ireland,
Cathal, Mullaney, of course.
Sligo's a kind of I always find Sligo's quite interesting because like Sligo, Leitrim, you're kind of edging into Ulster, but you're still part of the sort of Wild Atlantic way. The Leitrim accent can be a little bit mad, kind of the closer you get to the border.
It's fairly mad, yeah. Yeah, I enjoy it though. I enjoy it.
What do we got, Cathal?
Well, do I answer that?
Who are you talking to?
Newcastle manager Eddie Howe says the club has achieved Champions League qualification ahead of schedule. They're back in the Champions League for the first time in 20 years after their goalless draw with Leicester in the Premier League last night. Leicester 2 points from safety. They play West Ham in their final game of the season on Sunday. Big game tonight for the Republic of Ireland under 17s. They play Hungary at the European Championships. A win for Ireland will secure their place in the quarterfinals. Kickoff for that one in Hungary is at 7 o'clock. The Giro d'Italia resumes today. Eddie Dunbar is 8th in general classification. He's 3 minutes and 40 seconds behind the leader Bruno Armorai, and Tiger Woods has had to withdraw from next month's US Open. The 15-time major winner is still recovering from the operation he had on his ankle last month.
Cathal, Mullaney, great stuff as
Thank
always.
you, lads.
Thanks a million for hopping into us this Tuesday morning, 8:54 AM on OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now. We're going to turn our attention back to some of the weekend action in sport. It was a very busy sporting weekend, and the Katie Taylor fight, and sadly disappointing defeat for Katie Taylor at Dublin's 3 Arena to Chantal Cameron. And delighted to welcome the Offaly boxer who's been on to the show with us on the show at different points before, Grainne Walsh, to the show this morning. Grainne, how are things?
How are you keeping? Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for joining us. You're in Poland at the moment, so you've been in Germany, you're in Poland, and you're fighting tomorrow, is that right?
Fighting tomorrow, yeah. So you got me at a good time, to be fair. I have no fight day today, so I'm kind of just resting, making weight and all for tomorrow, so I'm good to go.
You could talk to us all day if you wanted.
Well, I wouldn't push it that far now. You mightn't like me. The more hungry I get, you mightn't like talking to me.
Bit of hanger.
Yeah. Do you mind the day before a fight? Is it, or do you be nervous, or is it more just minding yourself, relaxing, chilling out?
It's kind of, I don't know, like I've been in this position a good few times, so it's we got the draw and all yesterday, so I don't really like to look too far into the draw. I kind of just like being told who I'm fighting, what day I'm fighting, and then I'll take it one day at a time from there. I don't really like going into if I beat her, I fight her, and it doesn't really make any difference. You have to take it one day at a time in this sport.
So psychologically, Grainne, how much prep goes into the opponent and knowing like what to expect, how many curveballs you might expect, or how much you have to match up?
See, on the international scene, you kind of be fairly familiar with most people in your weight division. So like even around the hotel, like I'm seeing familiar faces, people I've fought before, people I've sparred at training camps and stuff. So you'd have a general idea yourself, but I tend to leave the real nitty gritty down to the coaches. They do their research on the opponent and they know your best assets and they come up with a bit of a game plan. But as well, a lot of it is done on the job as soon as you get in, because if you prepare for a certain type of fighter, and if they usually throw a 1-2 off the bat, for example, and then they don't do that, you have to be able to adapt yourself. So I try not to get too bogged down on exactly what's going to happen, because a lot can change in 10 seconds, never mind 3-minute rounds. So, well, actually on that, because it changed very, very early for Katie Taylor the other night, where like it was like the narrative was dead within half a minute nearly. It was like, okay, here we go. Yeah, like, you know, no one really knows what goes on in other people's camps or corners or tactics or any of that sort of stuff. Like, you know, there would have been an awful lot of research done in both camps on each other's on each other for the fight at the weekend. But, you know, again, a high pressure situation, you just don't know what way that affects you. And I don't know, I just feel like Chantal's style just didn't really suit Katie Taylor's style. I think in boxing it's very much a sport of styles make fights, and I just think that Chantal's relentless pressure is just all wrong for Katie. Whether they're going to have a rematch or not, I'm not too sure, but yeah, I think it'll be a tough few days following that defeat there at the weekend, and a very sad day for Ireland in general, because you know, Katie has done so much for not just sports people in Ireland, but just the people of Ireland, to give them something to smile about over the last decade or more. So we owe a lot to her.
Yeah, sad evening generally. Well, with Thomas Cardy, of course, won the Celtic heavyweight strap, and then a couple of hours before the main event, you have the crowd already in their seats waiting for some other Irish fighters. Dennis Hogan, who was in here last week, unfortunately lost his IBO super welterweight title on a points decision. That was against JJ Metcalf, and then Gary Cully, his first career defeat as well against Jose Felix. That was a third round knockout in that one. So already there was a couple of little mini blows, I guess, Gráinne, before Katie even took to the ring. It just kind of sucks the energy out of the room, I guess.
Yeah, like I can only imagine what the atmosphere must have been like at the fight, and like the tickets were so hard to get for the fight anyway, so I kind of lost hope on even getting tickets. But then as the fight grew closer, and even around fight week, all the buzz, like, God, I was raging I wasn't going, but then obviously I was coming away here, so it was, I had no choice really. But
you couldn't get a ticket,
big
no?
night for the Irish. Sorry?
You couldn't get a ticket, no?
No, tickets were like, people were thinking that, we get sorted out because we're with the Irish team and all, but no, it's first come first served. If you don't get one, there's no backhanders, unfortunately. Like if it was Croke Park, it might be different, there'd be more tickets available, but because the Tree Arena can only hold, you know, X amount of the whole population who would love to be there on the night, it was kind of, they were like gold dust, unfortunately. But look, I was here anyway, so it didn't really make much difference. But there was 8 of us gathered around the phone here. We landed on Saturday night, so we just made it to the hotel in time to watch the fight. And yeah, we just had seen Gary as well, and like a huge upset. Like, you know, it's just mad. Boxing is one, that's why I don't like to look too far ahead. You're only as good as the current time and your last performance. So I just think it's very difficult when you start looking into the future and planning all different things until you actually take care of business on the day.
You mentioned there the difference in styles between Katie Taylor and Chantel Cameron, and of course it's been well publicised that Katie had to go up a weight class as well. You know, there was a 3-inch reach advantage, I think, for Chantel Cameron. Were you surprised then at the decision to opt for a fighter of the talent of Chantel Cameron? Because, you know, she could have fought maybe a lesser boxer, won her fight in Dublin, had the lovely homecoming victory, but I guess it speaks volumes to Katie as well that she doesn't want the easy option.
Oh yeah, of course. And I've been watching all the post-fight interviews on all the different YouTube channels, and I like to do that actually in my downtime. I'm not really a big Netflix fan, but I like keeping up to date with all the pros and everything. So yeah, Katie honestly could have fought anybody and sold out the Tree Arena. But, you know, in her words, she wanted to have a night to remember for the Irish people, and she always wants to be remembered as taking the hardest challenges, and no one can argue that. She hasn't dodged anybody. She's had amazing fights and never shied away from a challenge. So, like I said earlier, we have so much to thank her for. Like, I wouldn't be in this position here in Poland if it wasn't for what Katie did. Chantel even said after the fight that she wouldn't be in that position if it wasn't for the way that Katie paved the way for everybody, not just Irish boxers, but females and boxers all around the world. So yeah, she could have fought anyone. She took the biggest challenge, but high risk, high reward, and unfortunately sometimes it just doesn't go your way. Nothing is guaranteed in boxing, and as you see with Gary's fight, one punch can change everything. And yeah, a sad night, but you know, we can take our hats off to them for taking the big challenges, and that's what we want to be remembered for in the sport, not taking any easy options.
That early start maybe took some people by surprise, just the dominance of Chantel Cameron in the early rounds. I think by the start of round 6 she was maybe 4-1 up with a lot of ringside scorecards, pinned to the ropes. She was taking a lot of punishment as well, Katie Taylor. And even I was reading Michael Carruth afterwards, Gráinne as well, and he was talking about the body shots. He was saying her sharpness just wasn't there. She was getting caught with a lot of body shots, and that is soul destroying, as it literally takes the air out of you. So that's not an easy thing, I'm sure, for her to have had to put up with as well. Early rounds, when you're getting so many body shots, it takes its toll.
Yeah, of course. And like, you know, you can take, I don't know, from personal perspective, a body shot can really like sap the energy straight out of you. So I don't know, everyone kind of thought that Katie would snatch the early rounds and Chantel would come on stronger in the late rounds, but I think Katie may have been trying to save some energy for the late rounds. Look, we can only speculate. We've no idea. Only Katie and her team know what the tactics were. But I just feel she looked a little bit overtrained, if anything. Didn't have that like up on the toes kind of in and out sharpness that we have seen previously. Look, no one can say what that actually is. I'd say Katie's even thinking, what went wrong at the weekend or whatever. But you mentioned about the moving up in weight class. It would be a very different fight, even moving up the same way Katie did, if Chantel was a different style fighter. If she was a counter puncher and on the back foot, it wouldn't have been as evident. But because Chantel was sitting on Katie's chest for the entire time and never took a step back, she would have felt every bit of that weight difference. So I think that was the defining factor in that regard. And like for 10 rounds, you could see at the end, Chantel looked like she could have went on and done a few more. So I think the styles was just the wrong kind of match. But we'll see. If Chantel is talking about moving down to 135 pounds, that could go in Katie's favour and they could change the tactics up altogether. We just don't know. But on Saturday night, it looked like it was one-way traffic, really.
If you were Katie, would you want to fight her again?
Stylistically, look, Katie is going to want to fight her again regardless, because like Eddie Hearn said afterwards, she's not going to be able to sleep with that loss on her record. There's a rematch clause in the contract for a reason, and whatever way that happens now, I'm sure Chantel will want some things in her favour, because she did take everything, the shorter end of the straw for everything this week, or on the fight week last week, as the homecoming for Katie. But now she has her own things to kind of shout about as well. So it would be nice to see the fight again, maybe in Katie's weight division this time, for Chantel to challenge to be a two-way undisputed champion. But we just don't know. There's a lot of things that you can speculate about, but as I said earlier, no one knows what goes on behind the scenes. There's an awful lot of things that go on that we have no idea about, so we'll just have to wait to see in the coming months.
In that decision as to if they do have that rematch and trigger that rematch clause, and as you say, Katie probably will trigger that part of her contract, what weight they fight at is so crucial, because I mean, if Chantel Cameron comes down to 135 pounds, as you say, Gráinne, and takes all her belts at that level, I mean, that would be, it's such a blow for Katie Taylor.
It is. That's the only thing I'd worry about. That's the only thing that I would maybe doubt if Katie will want the fight at that weight, because it was grand. She was coming up. She was the challenger, even though she was the favourite and the homecoming and everything. She was the challenger. So she still had her 5 belts at 135. But if now after that fight and seeing that Chantel's style is a very difficult style to deal with for Katie's style particularly, moving down, obviously the risk of losing it all maybe just a step too far. So we'll just see. I know there'll be many negotiations going on, but I think the two girls need to just take a bit of time out now, enjoy the time off, and then maybe just think about what's coming up next. But we never know. There's talk about the Amanda Serrano rematch yet, so we just don't know what's going to happen.
It's funny, you look at the fight it was a tight fight, but I guess if you look at the stats from CompuBox, so Chantel Cameron threw 565 punches versus Taylor's 284, and then there's other metrics as well. So she landed, Chantel Cameron that is, 141 to 111, 27 jabs landed versus 21. You have 114 power punches landing versus 90 for Katie. So all of these stats, perhaps unsurprisingly, in favour of the bigger boxer, Gráinne.
Yeah, I think, even though Chantel threw more than double that Katie threw, but it's just, and even she didn't even land a massive amount more in the stats. But if you're a judge sitting on the side of the ring, the general picture of the fight, Katie's back was on the ropes majority of the time, and Chantel was the one pressing on. Now, when Katie did plant her feet and throw 5 punches in the blink of an eye, that's what Katie's best at. But the side steps and all that sort of stuff, we didn't see that part of Katie Taylor. But look, they could have had a completely different game plan. You never know. You know that famous saying, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. So it's easy for us sitting out here with no pressure on us to be able to not criticise, but to, put our own kind of opinion on it. But it's very different when you're the home favourite, you're getting in and there's 10,000 screaming Irish fans there and all the pressure is on you. You just don't know what way that affects you. I know myself, being in the back end of Poland, the pressure is still high here, so I can only imagine what she's feeling getting in. And in a way, Chantel had no pressure on her at all. No one was expecting her to win, really.
What is the Katie Taylor thing, like, Gráinne? I genuinely, I don't get it, because like I'm not really into boxing. Like the tickets were over 500 quid the other night. Boxing's on the periphery of people's mind in Ireland. It's not a big sport over here. Women's boxing obviously is the smaller end of that. And Katie, as I mentioned earlier, she won that Personality of the Year against Sam Bennett. And the hype around Katie Taylor, is incredible. Like, and I could see from your perspective how inspiring she is, but like, she's not necessarily hugely charismatic. She's quite shy in her own way. There's just something about her that Irish people have absolutely embraced, like hook, line, and sinker, and love her. Like,
yeah. When you think of the difference between herself and Conor McGregor, like, and McGregor sitting ringside, he's very much a Marmite kind of character. You either love him or you hate him. Whereas I've never heard anyone to say a bad word really about Katie Taylor. She doesn't really scream and shout from the rooftops. She's very unassuming. She's won everything there is to win in a sport that, it's just crazy the things that she's done, and she doesn't look for major praise for it, which I think is so admirable. And it's not only people in boxing who she's appealed to, at the weigh-ins and at the public workout. You have people of, all backgrounds, old women, old men, young women, young girls, young fellas. Like, she just appeals to everyone. You don't have to be a boxer to find her an inspiration. So
it's really interesting to say that, actually, because maybe it is her humility, the fact that Irish people naturally don't really like arrogance. They don't really like people being above themselves. Maybe it is that.
Yeah, I think for Irish people, we're very quick to be like, oh, get over yourself, or bring people back down to earth. So I think that's what's so nice about Katie Taylor, is that she is so humble, and even though she has every reason to scream and shout from the rooftops and dictate X, Y, and Z, she doesn't do that. That's not her style. And I always thought when she turned pro, would it be as successful because she doesn't have that trash talking? But look, it just shows her your talent can do the talking for you, and she's proved that. So I think that's why she's touched so many people.
Yeah, that's probably why it felt so unnatural when Katie was calling out Chantal Cameron on social media. You're like, this doesn't sound like Katie Taylor. You mentioned the atmosphere there, Gráinne, like as something that plays a role, because all last week I was thinking, the home crowd is going to play to Katie's advantage and she'll have no fear. But then you forget of the impact of being that home favourite, and Chantal Cameron perhaps comes out, and it would have been so easy for her to kind of bow down and hide away from that away crowd, but she seemed to lean into the role of not the villain, but I guess it is the villain.
Yeah.
No one in the arena wants you to win, essentially.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I always knew that Chantal's style would pose issues for Katie Taylor, but it all just comes down to who shows up properly on the day, and we don't know. Like, he used a keyword there, perhaps. We have no idea. We can only look from the outside looking in and see what we might think of, how it would affect you walking out with that many people. It could spur you on. Katie's no stranger to the big occasion. Like, she's been, over 10 years ago, she was boxing in the Olympics in London, and, in the XL Arena when the decibel levels hit an all-time high and all that sort of thing. So she's been doing, this is second nature to her, but you just don't know. I don't think Chantal shied away from it at all, and it made for a brilliant fight. It was a competitive fight, but in my opinion, a one-sided competitive fight, if that makes sense.
Finally, Gráinne, what would you like to see Katie's next year or two look like? There's been some calls from some boxers for her to maybe retire or consider retirement. Obviously, none of us have any right to, I guess, tell Katie what to do. She's going to do what she's going to do regardless. Would you expect a rematch and maybe the Serrano fight leaning into next year, or how do you think the next year or two is going to go for Katie Taylor?
Well, look, we cannot, like you said, we have no right to dictate what she does, and she has good people around her, people who care about her and stuff. So I know that she'll be getting good advice from everyone that's around her. But realistically, if she keeps fighting, there is only 2 fights that she could possibly have. That's the Chantal rematch and the Amanda Serrano fight. So if she decides to continue, and if she boxes those 2 fights, regardless of what way they go, I think she maybe at that point she'll have completed boxing. She's already completed boxing. She had completed boxing back in 2012 when she won gold at the Olympics. Her dad wanted her to retire then, but we're 11 years on now and she's still going strong. So if she wants to continue on and has those 2 more fights, she will have literally completed the book. So she could go off and maybe enjoy the fruits of her labour and all the hard work and sit back and watch the next generation come through. Like, she's been so passionate about paving that way, so it'd be nice for her to sit with her feet up, not getting punched anymore, and watch us go through it.
Before Gráinne is back on, we got to get a Netflix documentary that she might actually watch, maybe something on boxing.
You can stick to
I
the
actually
YouTube.
watched the Conor McGregor one. There was only a 4-piece one, so me and my roommate watched it there the last 2 nights, but we've run out of that now, so I think I'm going to go back to reading to try and get the mindset right for the fight tomorrow.
Absolutely. Well, listen, Gráinne, always great to chat to you, and listen, very best of luck in that fight tomorrow.
Thanks very much, lads. Appreciate it.
Brilliant stuff. Grainne Walsh there, always fascinating to chat to Gráinne.
She's class. Like
That's
I think I was on with her once here before, but
Offaly's finest.
she's just the type of person you just want to have a coffee with, and have a bit of crack with. Maybe watch a hurling game or something.
Yeah, she was a very good soccer player back in the day. As
yeah,
well.
I remember I remember talking about her path to boxing, because like as a young girl, what sports do you get into?
Yeah.
And her path to boxing was kind of it was a little bit random, but it's just, I'm always of the opinion that kids should try everything. Throw your hat in the ring at everything, and pardon the pun, because it's like the kids that don't become jockeys are never sat in a horse. If they sat in a horse, half of them would fall in love with it 100%.
Yeah.
Try everything, and if you're a parent, I know it's difficult with all what that entails, but yeah, give them a go at everything, I think.
Absolutely. Here. Great stuff from Grainne Walsh as per usual. 9:13 a.m. on this Tuesday morning's OTB AM. Braeburn Coffee is the official coffee partner of Off the Ball. Braeburn Coffee is coming to an Applegreen near you. New Braeburn locations are popping up every month, so visit applegreenstores.com/Braeburn to find your nearest Braeburn coffee experience. Here are some of the highlights on the OTB podcast network coming up across today. We will have the football pod. We'll have Graham Hunter from last night's show as well, and the Koi Gig pod, which I mentioned earlier on as well, with an exclusive interview with the WSL Player of the Year nominee, Manchester United's Ona Batiai. You can follow OTB across social and subscribe to the OTB podcast network. After the ads, we'll have the Irish cricketer George Dockrell joining myself and Johnny in studio. First though, the 42.IE's Gavin Casey was on the show with Joe last night, and he spoke about where Katie Taylor goes next. Back in a sec.
She won't retire, and I would say because she won't retire on a loss.
No.
She won't retire on a loss. She'll want to find out herself.
Make sure it's over. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I would say she doesn't think it is over.
Oh, I suspect you're right. One last very quick one. The Irish big time boxing industry can't be built around Katie Taylor given her age. It's probably a pity Gary Cully lost, because that might have been something to build around. But it's going to be interesting to see now if promoters look at Saturday and say, okay, that looked pretty good, let's go there.
Yeah, exactly. And I would say at the moment we probably don't quite have the depth of talent in the professional ranks to build a sustainable, big arena industry. But there's guys like Paddy Donovan, who was on the undercard, trained by Andy Lee, who did very well and had a great reception. There was Thomas Carty, a heavyweight, the same. Callum Walsh over in the States on the West Coast, training with Freddie Roach, backed by Dana White from Cork originally, making waves over there, and he'd love to come back here. So maybe that might be an illustration of a potential scene or a potential industry, if you like.
Yeah.
But I would say it could be, beyond a rematch at least, it could be a while before we see the big time stuff back here, maybe 3-4 years.
You're listening
to OTB AM.
Off the Ball.
If he gets a knighthood, it'll be the services to insomnia, because it's a boring way of playing.
There's 20 different stories to say that fit into this. That's why we love sport. It's the storytelling element of sport.
Subscribe to the rugby stream on the OTB Sports app now.
We're counting down to the World Cup.
Lily Ard scores one of the most important goals they have ever scored.
Check out #OTB Koi Gig to start your World Cup build-up.
They are going to the World Cup Finals.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
9:16 a.m. on this Tuesday morning's OTB AM. Delighted to have you with us as per usual. Myself and Johnny Ward with you this morning. Now, mental health in sport, particularly in high performance athletes, is a topic that's been getting a lot of attention of late. But supports for the mental well-being of sports people isn't being reactive to mental health issues when they arise, but rather implementing the support measures to prevent them. Cricket Ireland, supported by the Irish Cricket Association, has recently introduced a series of mental health supports and access to therapeutic services for their players through the organisation Inspire, one of the largest providers of workplace wellbeing in Ireland. So we wanted to touch on this and just the work that's being done in cricket behind the scenes to help athletes at the top level deal with, I guess, the pressures of the sport and everything that comes with it. So delighted to have George Dockrell in studio with us, the Irish cricket player. How are you keeping, George?
Yeah, good, thanks.
It's been a number of years. We were just chatting during the ad break there. You have been in here before, but it's been a while. It probably looks slightly bit different.
Yeah, a bit of a change up. I think probably 4 or 5 years ago we were in here before a series against England, so it's nice to be back.
Are you travelling to England tomorrow?
Yep, no, we're heading over to play Essex in a warm-up game first, and then on to Lords as well to play England in a test match, so exciting next couple of weeks. You've been
really at the top of your game the last couple of years. Like, do you feel like you're in your prime at the moment?
Yeah, look, I've really enjoyed it. I've probably quite a unique career in the fact that I've switched from being a bowler to more of a batter. I lost my contract for a little bit in the middle of that period as well. So I think coming back and kind of feeling like, right, I'm going to make every last bit of this count has definitely helped me. So I've really, really enjoyed my cricket. I think the last
part of mental health as well, where it's like, you have to contextualise, actually I need to make the most of this.
Definitely, yeah. And just trying to be a bit more present. I find whenever I look a year, 2 years in advance, I find it quite hard to then actually enjoy the trip I'm on. So I suppose, yeah, my attitude's been a little bit more enjoying each trip as maybe my last time there, maybe my last game, and with that attitude it's been going really well.
You would have represented Ireland from, is it under 13 level onwards? So like it's not like you were a late blossomer. You have been a prodigy from a pretty young age.
Yeah, like I would have started, within the system at 13 and came into the national team at 17 as well. So, had quite an early start. Had a few issues maybe in the middle, where I was trying to work out things within my game. But as I said, then being able to come back into the squad now, and see how much cricket's changed even in these last 12 years, 13 years with the Irish team. It's been amazing, and I've really enjoyed it.
Were you considering quitting the sport when you didn't get that contract that time?
I needed to do some other things outside. I had my data science degree at DCU, so I went on and did a little bit more work with that. I took an internship in data analytics.
You were in Pricewaterhouse schools, or you're still there?
Yeah. So with PwC. So again, I went away for a little bit. Got a taste, I guess, of the other side of things. And once I'd finished my degree, which was last year, I guess now it's like trying to make the most out of my cricket then, and knowing that, look, that is there for me when I finish. But yeah, look, it definitely helped me, I think, to take a little bit of pressure off the cricket and realise that at the end of the day it is still sport, and trying to play with that attitude.
This is a stupid question, but can you marry data analytics and sport?
Yeah, and look, we've really changed our approach, I think, in terms of our attitude towards cricket, even just as a national team. Scott Irvine, our analyst, is brilliant in terms of the information and insights he gives us. Again, if I could move into that after playing, it'd be fantastic.
Does he feel a little bit like, Jesus, I better say this, like, I better sound good here, or George is going to call me out?
Not at all. I think I probably pick up more from him than that. So look, I love a lot of the information that we get now.
Cool.
Cricket's becoming a lot more data driven, and I think the nature of the game, the way it is play after play and it resets every time, means it's a lot more open to being analysed. So look, it's a really interesting area, and look, maybe that's something that I could get into after I'm done playing.
There's that Netflix doc.
There you go. Yeah. Following George around. We've spoken on the show plenty of times about League of Ireland players, especially younger players, and heading over to England or staying here. I know Brexit has kind of changed that a little bit for young players, but for you made a debut, I think, for Ireland at senior level at 17, and you obviously went over to England then to cut your teeth in English county cricket. I guess is that the only pathway for really talented international level Irish cricketers, or are there other ways you can go about it?
It was when I was younger. It was a slightly different landscape. The change in the rules now means that if you're playing in England as an Irish cricketer, you're an overseas player.
Right.
So the opportunities are different, and now all the young players are now developing their game in Ireland. And it's a very different landscape. I think a lot of the young cricketers have to develop their game in international cricket, and that's incredibly tough and incredibly mentally challenging. But we're seeing with the likes of Josh Little, who's at the IPL right now over in India, Harry Tector, Lorcan Tucker, who have come through that Irish system without the use of the English setup, that we can create brilliant cricketers on the island of Ireland, and slightly unique way of doing it. As I said, a lot of it's kind of being in at the deep end and learning on your feet, but we've shown that it's possible, and I think that's really promising for Irish cricket.
What's been the highlight for you career-wise from an international perspective? Like, is there when people ask you that question, is it a an obvious moment that stands out?
Not really. I think it's been different moments along the way. Beating England in 2011 in that World Cup was
not bad.
Was pretty good. But again, beating England last year in the T20 World Cup was quite special with a new group of players trying to play a slightly different, more attacking brand of cricket. Playing our first Test matches and seeing how we've pushed cricket in Ireland from where it was when I started and to where it is now, and the supports that the young players have, and even the opportunities, like I said, to see the Tectors, the Tuckers, the Littles, fly the flag around the world with the world's best. So I think that shows that we're in a much better place than when I started, and being able to see that's been pretty fun.
I have to say, I do love the mixture of people on the Irish cricket team. Just it's almost like all walks of life, really, like north and south, just thrown together, and seems to be like this necessary harmony out of just like respect and love for each other and cricket, like. Yeah,
and look, it's it's an all Ireland sport, and I play with guys in the team who have been playing against underage cricket, under 11s all the way through, and so it is fantastic in that sense, and we have a great makeup within the squad, so hopefully that continues.
You mentioned there the desire and the reality now of Ireland playing a more attacking brand of cricket. What does that translate to in actual terms, and how does that develop over a couple of years? Like what needs to happen in order for that to happen?
I guess a lot of it was the messaging from top down, so from the coaches, from the captain, and then from the players buying into that. In simple terms, with our batting, it was going out there and taking it to the opposition, kind of no matter what position you're in, and making sure that you back your options and take them. Now, it does mean that when you try and play that way every now and then you fail, and you probably fail spectacularly when you do fail, but it means that you're trying to win and you give yourself the best chance to win every game. And I think once you're trying to play that way, you learn, and that's what I found, that I probably wasn't doing that in my earlier stages of batting in international cricket, but once I put myself under more pressure in the games, I did fail quite a few times, but eventually you do work things out, and as a group we've seemed to do that pretty well the last 12 months.
You mentioned there that the supports that are there for younger players now, and that's what we wanted to touch on today, is that the Cricket Ireland are leading the way in many ways in terms of the supports there for its athletes, and I know they're working alongside, as I said, Inspire as well. And it is tough, I can imagine, for athletes at the elite level, because as you say, you're balancing life, family, sport, keeping yourself in good shape, and demands from elsewhere as well. Even as you say, when you lost your contract, like that takes its toll mentally.
Yeah, it does. I guess, look, athletes, the highs are high, the lows are low. I think that's something that all athletes can understand. I think within cricket, we have some unique pressures in terms of how long our tours can be at times. So we were on a 7-8 week trip to Bangladesh and Sri Lanka through the winter, and if you're away from your family, your friends, your support network, and if times are tough through that, I think that can really challenge your resolve. So look, working on your physical health and on your skills in your game is so important, but also your mental health too can be just as important, especially when those times are tough. So Cricket Ireland are aware of that, as are the ICA, and hence we have access to the Inspire support service, which is fantastic for all of us.
I think, Shane, this is important. So, like, it wasn't really reported on recently, but Damien Duff was doing I think Shells had won a game recently, but he was doing some sort of interview afterwards, post-match interview, the normal stuff. Just out of nowhere, he just mentioned Ben Curtis from Drogheda, who's taken a step back from the game to look after his mental health.
Yeah.
And it wasn't much reported on, but this is complete outlier stuff. This just doesn't happen. And the bravery of that kid to do that, because the natural inclination must be just get on with it, or at least come up with some other excuse.
Yeah, and look, it is something that we're seeing more and more across a variety of different sports, which is great. I think that people are understanding that there's times when you need a physical break, and similarly sometimes your mental health, it's so important that you need to keep an eye on that. Again, a lot of the stuff we're talking about with Inspire and a lot of these mechanisms, I guess, trying to avoid getting to that point, and it can be across a kind of a wide range of services for whatever different people need, but again, a lot of it I think comes from trying to have those things in place before those issues arise, and we're aware of it. We speak about it. Before that last trip, we knew this is going to be a tough tour, and our captain Andy Balbirnie is fantastic. That the first thing he said at the start of the trip is, this is going to be a tough trip, and whenever you need, my door's open, come and talk, because you're going to have that point in this trip where you need to, and we are good as a group at discussing those things and staying together.
Yeah, I don't know if that's normal. Like, I don't know, is that like, that's for Andy to say that, like, because
it's brilliant. Like,
it's paradoxical as well. It's like, it's not consistent with, like, say if you're a rugby player, the hits you're taking physically, hit, just get on with it. But like, there's another side to it as well.
Yeah, and look, I think cricket is such a mental game. I've found the biggest growth I've had has always been mental. It's always been actually just sitting down and thinking about what I'm trying to do and working on more kind of coping mechanisms under pressure, clarity around what I want to do, and even just being in a better headspace in the morning of big games, I find has been the biggest thing I can do, as opposed to training the day before. So look, it is a big area that we're aware of. Again, cricket, there's a lot of failures within there, especially with batting, and there's a lot of luck involved too. So I think you need to have that resilience, and you need to have those mechanisms for when times are tough, because they will be at some stage.
What sort of coping mechanisms have you kind of learned for pressure over the years? Because I suppose when you're, as I said, 17 coming into the Irish team, it's different to the George Dockrell now. It's completely, I'd imagine, psychologically especially different. So what sort of coping mechanisms have you kind of brought into your career to make life easier?
Yeah, look, there's a lot of different things. Reframing is one of the most simple ones that I've used under pressure. I'm not sure who it was early on who spoke about this, but reframing anxiety or stress around games into excitement. Those huge games were what I used to fear when I was 22 or 23, those big moments. But then I realised, look, when I'm finished this game, I'll give anything to be back out in the middle of a game, under pressure, having been hit for a 6 out of the stadium, and I have to, come back again. And
I think that's really, really relevant. Like, say, like Shane's sister was on the lately singing, and I did think about what is that like mixture of fear and excitement at the start, and being able to turn that maybe slight anxiety, and I'm paraphrasing here, but into, wow, this is an opportunity. Like,
yeah, and look, it is, because again, I'd rather go out and get hit for 6 sixes or have failed at the highest level in that arena than not do it. And I know that when I finish playing cricket, when I'm a bit older and a lot more grey, I'll be thinking, how amazing was it to go out and be in that moment at that time. So again, trying to keep reframing it like that. I know I'm lucky, I've played a lot of games for Ireland, so I suppose I don't feel like I have a whole lot to lose if this were my last year, in that sense. So I'm lucky, I know, with that. But again, just trying to enjoy it, because it is incredible. It is sports still at the end of the day, so you're trying to keep positive around that, and once you do that, I find then I also will play better, most importantly.
That's the fascinating thing, because we had Ronnie O'Sullivan in here last week.
I was going to mention him, actually.
Like, he's spoken about Steve Peters and the work he's done with his psychologist over the years, and two of the things in his book that really stood out to me that he's used as his little things of positive affirmation, and the dimmer switch. I think someone mentioned to him about a dimmer switch and how you can just light it for yourself as you see fit. It doesn't always have to be bright or dark. And the other thing was almost the overview effect, or the helicopter effect of, sometimes he said he's in a massive match at the Crucible, and he almost can see himself from above, and he's like, oh, this doesn't matter. It almost relaxes his body, where he's like, this is making himself at ease almost in the middle. So it is that kind of thing that different sports people use different niche things to relax themselves at what should be a really stressful moment.
Yeah, and again, it is so unique to each player, what you need for that match. And again, I'm still finding ways to try and be at my best in those moments. Like, it's not all rosy. I still learn every week, and again, Nathan Horrocks, our new spin bowling coach, has been brilliant. He's given me a couple more techniques for dealing with pressure, and again, it's been mental work as opposed to technical stuff. So again, like, I'm still learning the whole way through, and then you might find that those things work for you, and it also might change over time. So I guess it's just constantly working, trying to find new methods that help you for that time.
The great thing is as well, there's no end line for it. You don't reach a point in your career or in your life actually where you say, okay, I'm mentally perfect now. No one ever is perfect, so it's like it's one of those things that you have to be consistently working on throughout your life and career with cricket, I'd imagine, because you're never going to get to the end point.
No, and I think like a lot of what I try and do as well is even writing down little bits and pieces, because there's times when I might find a book where I had a few notes and it kind of re-trigger something within me that I was doing a few years before. So I've started trying to write down a little bit more of my thoughts around those kind of things, and a lot of the time then when I read them, sometimes it's positive affirmations or whatever, it can kind of bring me back to that moment where maybe I was playing a little bit better than I am right now. But yeah, I found that's really helped me, I suppose, the last 12 months.
Yeah, I'm impressed, to be fair, Cricket Ireland, those supports, and as you said, the Irish Cricket Association as well. And that's the thing that impressed me when I was reading up on this in advance, is that they're seeing the player, the person behind the player, whereas when we're watching these matches on TV, all we see is the player, and sometimes you can forget that all these people have lives. We spoke about it earlier with the Leinster players. They all have family there, who are in bits after the match, and that's probably an element of it that we don't think about with elite sports people.
Like Katie Taylor as well, like Katie Taylor to come out of, like, her face is all over the paper looking bruised and devastated, like that's not easy for her to deal with, for somebody who's used to winning as well, like.
Yeah, no, and look, it is, it is a challenge, I think, being an athlete. I think you want to be people first and athletes second, and that's how you want people to view you. And I think, look, Cricket Ireland and the ICA have that whole view, and hence we have access to this Inspire Support Hub, which is fantastic, and it's a nice range of services as well. It's it is quite bespoke to whatever different athletes need, whether it's the phone line, whether it's the online platform, or therapy if needs be. So it's fantastic to have that range of services, because again, you're people first and athletes second, and it's pretty important to remember that.
Absolutely. Listen, George, great to catch up. Best of luck over in England as well, and no doubt we'll catch up again soon in the next little while. Cheers. Great to talk to you as always. George Dockrell, the Irish cricketer there, joining myself and Johnny on OTB AM on this Tuesday morning at 9:33 AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now. Coming up on tomorrow's show, we'll have the Coventry City and Republic of Ireland striker Seanie Maguire joining us. So really looking forward to that ahead of the Championship playoff final. Derek McNamara analysing the Champions Cup final from the weekend as well. Will O'Callaghan will bring us his updated hurling power rankings, plus plenty more besides. Right now though, some highlights from Graham Hunter on the latest Vinicius Junior racism incident in Spanish football. Have a tremendous Tuesday.
Now, you're very welcome, Max. So, an issue that we have discussed at length with our next guest, and we will continue to discuss at length with our next guest every time it arises. Any of us who watched the Man City Real Madrid games were once again bowled over by the quality of Vinicius Junior, and we were also, I suspect, last night dismayed to see the scenes at the Mestalla. He is once again the target of the most pernicious, vicious racism. This was in a match against Valencia. He was also sent off in the game for violent conduct in the dying minutes of the game. Valencia won 1-0 for what it's worth, which isn't much. And the context here, of course, I mean, these are just the headline moments. There are, I suspect, a litany of incidents we don't know anything about. But for instance, if you just take what a 22-year-old here has been asked to suffer and be on the receiving end over the last 7-8 months. September just gone. Atletico fans sang racist songs towards him in particular. It's towards him. It's very much directed towards him outside their own stadium before Real Madrid played there in September 2022. That same month, you'll remember, we spoke to Graham, pundits in Spain criticising his goal celebration, the temerity to dance and all the abuse that went with it. December of 22 appeared to be subject to racist abuse when he walked past fans at Valladolid when he was substituted. January of this year, an effigy was hung from a bridge near the club's training ground. This was before a game against Atletico. February of this year, Mallorca fans filmed racially abusing him during a game against Real Madrid. And in March just gone, La Liga talked about the intolerable racist behaviour once again observed against Vinicius, this time in a game against Barcelona. And it was subsequently reported to the Barcelona Court of Instruction. Graham Hunter is with us. Graham, evening.
Joseph, evening.
The context is disgusting. We're here again. This was a bumper, no pun intended with your Twitter handle. This was a bumper weekend of Irish sport. We had Katie Taylor fighting. We had a European Cup final involving Leinster. We had a gazillion GAA matches. The Premier League obviously dominates the television landscape. I suspect a lot of people listening are maybe only hearing about this for the first time. So could you describe what happened last night? And I think in particular the upset on Vinicius's face, because that was the image I think most of us will take.
So for Emery, who then was suffering the La Rochelle comeback, or watching the context, no context for the racism, but the context for the cauldron of the game is that Valencia hate Real Madrid, absolutely hate them. Valencia are scrapping for their lives. They set out to play an aggressive, pressing game. They played very impressively, indeed. They scored, and Real Madrid were pummeling them. Mamardashvili, Valencia's Georgian goalkeeper, was playing absolutely brilliantly. There's a bizarre moment when a Valencia ball boy throws the ball on the pitch in the penalty area. Vinicius is breaking into the penalty area. He's about to be either tackled cleanly, which I doubt, or a penalty's about to be given away, or he's about to get past his man within the penalty area, cutting in at high speed from Madrid's left. And one of the central defenders for Valencia, seeing the spare ball, which is sitting in the penalty area, the officials haven't spotted it, kicks it so accurately. If he kicked it accurately, Valencia wouldn't be in danger of relegation. Kicks it so accurately that the ball that Vinicius is dribbling in at high speed, at full tilt, disappears from underneath him. Both balls go out of play. The danger is averted. VAR gets involved, and the Turkish central defender is subsequently booked for what looks like a deliberately ungentlemanly conduct. And it's at this point that three quarters of the way through the game, Vinicius is being abused. He'd been racially abused on arrival at the stadium, where hundreds of people, I couldn't see any women involved, so let me say, take a risk, say hundreds of men are shouting about being a monkey at full pitch, surrounded by cops who do nothing. He has to walk into his place of work that day with that echoing clearly throughout the game, because there are now not only social media videos, but the two central Spanish broadcasters, one for domestic audience, one for international audience, have individual mics around the ground, and they pick up individual comments. The level of directed abuse at him, and I'm saying abuse now deliberately because there are many white men in this industry in Spain now who are saying, we support him, this is wrong, but it's also the case that the level of insults that are permitted now, that are fashionable now, to us are intolerable. I don't think they're doing so in tone-deaf way, saying we're all the same and we're affected by a kind of version of racism for us. There is a feeling that the football community in Spain, particularly in the top league, is right up to its chin. And for whatever reason, I hear white men in managerial or playing positions around La Liga coming out to support people of colour who are abused. For whatever reason, they join the chorus of anger. I'll be welcoming them in. So then what happens is Vinicius specifically identifies the person who's been making monkey noises and his arms under his arms tucked under his armpits like a monkey. He's specific, and there's a furore where Gaia, captain of Valencia, goes and tries to pull him away from doing that. Now, Gaia subsequently speaks out against racism. Gaia is subsequently sympathetic to what the plight of Vinicius at that stadium, but he does an act which seems to say, stop doing that. Over in the touchline, while Vinicius is literally on the edge of the grass, not the pitch, but the grass where it connects with the stand behind the goal, pointing at the guy and looking around for security people or police to say, this is the guy who's racially abusing me. Justin Kluivert, who has a very good game and is a young man of colour himself, is over at the fourth official, gesturing to the fourth official that Vinicius should be booked. This is the point at which Vinicius twice goes over to Ancelotti. Ancelotti says to him, I don't want to take you off because you're not to blame, you're the victim. What do you want to do? Vinicius said, well, I do want to come up, but I do want the game to be stopped. And Ancelotti's saying, I don't want that responsibility to be on your shoulders. The match delegate for Real Madrid and Ancelotti go to the referee, and the referee says, there's a protocol. It's a 3 striking out. We can't abandon the pitch just yet. We have to warn them, and then warn them the second time, and then the third time we can take the players off the pitch. At that point, you watch Ancelotti talking to Vinicius. You can see the anger amongst Vinicius's colleagues, and then what happens, I find almost equally pernicious, because I have no proof, Joe, and the burden of proof is on us. So I can't say that the 2 Valencia players I'm about to act and the refereeing staff on the pitch and in the bar room, I cannot say they're racist. But I argue in the ESPN column I've written, and I'm sticking to that point with you, that if you are Vinicius, or if you are those people who work with him or love him, and you see how he's treated compared to how Mamardashvili, the Georgian national goalkeeper for Valencia, and Ugo Duro are treated, you'll be left going, well, I wonder why that is. My reason for explaining that, and I'll close so you can come back in, Joe, but you asked me to describe the picture. Yeah. What happens is that Mamardashvili, this gigantic, exceptionally talented Georgian goalkeeper, has made 2 very, very, very not good, world-class saves in short supply, in short instance, and Cross's free kick is the last one. He's touched it over. It's very late in the match. Valencia are leading 1-0. We're getting close to the end of added time. Valencia want to waste time. Yunus Musa takes the ball behind the goal line and tries to waste time. Tony Rudiger runs over, quite rightly, wrestles the ball from him, pushes him. I don't know if he pushed him enough to send him down, but necessarily down goes Yunus Musa. Vinicius has been going over to Rudiger and Musa to try and help get the ball back, to take the corner, to try and equalise. And all he's done is he's standing over Yunus Musa, who Rudiger has pushed down. Mamardashvili sprints off out of his goal like a lunatic, and I'm going to say attacks Vinicius. There's a massive row. 85-90% of the players on the pitch become involved, and Mamardashvili is right in Vinicius' face, screaming at him with 2 or 3 people holding him back. And Ugo Duro, the Valencia forward, has his arm crooked around Vinicius' neck in what is a chokehold. Ugo Duro, then as things are separated out by people pulling everybody apart, as will happen, is struck by Vinicius' forearm. And at that point, having been sinned against all night, not sinned, not the sinner, Vinicius commits a red card offence, and he's sent off in total isolation for what he did there. That's right, it's a red card. Mamardashvili is part of the VAR review, because there's a VAR review over this whole incident. He the worst he gets is a booking. That's wrong. That's outright wrong. I can't state specifically why that different criterion is applied to him, but I have my suspicions. The VAR team don't even recommend that Ugo Duro, who was not involved in the original incident, has Vinicius by a chokehold. No sanction recommended from the VAR team or on the on-pitch refereeing team. That's wrong. In the context of what was happening that night, in the context of what was done to Vinicius, in the context of this national outcry, finally, about the lack of action over racial abuse to anybody basically who's not white in Spanish football. I cannot explain in any way that's satisfactory how the all-white refereeing officiating team judged these 2 white men differently in their actions from Vinicius because of the rule, but because of what football laws states. He gets sent off, and I'll tail off by saying Thibaut Courtois said the culture of insulting. I watch what Vinny goes through every week. If the protocol doesn't immediately recommend that we should walk off, the protocol needs to change. Ancelotti on live television says, I don't want to talk about the match. I want to talk about something far more important. Ancelotti specifies that he thinks there's a grave problem across the country epitomised by the way in which Vinicius is consistently racially abused. This in previous months, Joe, when we've talked about this, I have said that the two things that need to happen on the punishment scale need to be closure of certain stands, closure of certain stadiums in the right context following racist actions, and the other is that white colleagues of these non-white footballers across all teams who are abused must stand with them and speak out. That happens. Ceballos speaks out, Courtois speaks out, Carlo Ancelotti speaks out, and that, for my taste, is the way to begin. Xavi today has spoken out and said, previously I've thought about taking a team off a pitch. I haven't been the manager until these last 2 seasons here. In that context, I will take a team off a pitch. And somebody chirped up Xavi Hernandez, the Barcelona manager, in the press conference, well, this is Real Madrid. And he's like, club colours, club crests don't come into this. This is a human issue. We stand together. He said, why should, he said also, this is what I meant about Courtois talked about being personally insulted, Xavi talked about being personally insulted, and it's a different but nonetheless related issue about the cavalier way many people who go to games in Spain feel that they can act. I think it's echoed across some stadiums in Britain too. But the point is, Xavi said, this is my workplace. I'm not willing to accept it. Try to go into a bakery or a newspaper office. He said, well, maybe a newspaper office. He said, try and go on a building site and abuse a worker. You've got a brick in the head. Now, unlike me, I'm sure Xavi doesn't feel that the occasional resorting to violence is the right thing, and I'm trying to control the fury, that impotent fury that I feel right now. It's leaving me shaking with just fury, because it's time for cold and clear-cut analysis, forensic language, rather than promises of violence and fury. But Joe, it was disgusting what happened last night, and the paper trail to lead up to it has been, in terms of Spanish football, years and years and years. In terms of Vinicius, months and months and months.
Yeah. And it struck me, I mentioned at the outset, that he was in tears on the pitch. And I saw Ray Ferdinand, for instance, he tweeted, how many times do we need to see this young man, and he is just 22 years of age, subjected to this shit? I see pain, I see disgust, I see him needing help, and the authorities are not doing shit to help him. I saw Gianni Infantino then with the usual stuff. Thankfully, he didn't claim he was black. So he gave full solidarity to Vinicius, and then he said that there's no place for racism in football, and FIFA stands by players, which was just the usual impotent language. And more worryingly, I saw, and this is to let the listeners know, not you, I know you're aware of all this, but the La Liga president, for instance, Javier Tebas, I mean, he responded to Vinicius's Instagram post, which I'll come to in a moment, and he said, before criticising, this is the La Liga president lecturing Vinicius, this is where we are, before criticising and insulting La Liga, it's necessary that you inform yourself properly, Vinicius Jr. So, I mean, sit with that a moment. And as for Vinicius himself, he talked about how La Liga belongs to racists, and he said, sorry for the Spaniards who don't agree, but today in Brazil, Spain is known as a country of racists, and with everything that happens on a weekly basis, I have no way to defend Spain. I agree. You said something interesting there, Grainne, as you sketched out the details. You said there's been a national outcry. Finally, this has been a different reaction?
Yeah, I have no wish to sound naive. I try my hardest not to be stupid. But I sense the tiniest changing of direction, changing of the tide. One of the central problems is that Spain's society has gone through nowhere near the societal and immigration adjustments and trauma in some instances that Ireland and UK, for example, or France have. And for that reason, they're, in my opinion, in social terms, miles behind. But, for example, Marca today, has one editorial from a man called Carlos Carpio, who's just about second in charge, where he's coruscating against racism. Doesn't say it's partially excused by Vinicius' misbehaviour. He does say, right down the bottom of the column, that Vinicius has to change and that Vinicius is beyond mischievous. And it's a fact, if you and I, and your listenership is intelligent, if you and I can step out of this conversation and focus only on Vinicius as a 22-year-old, because of the ritualistically barbaric way he's treated, there is no question that his actions have become more pungent. That's a fact, and were I him, but if it were me in that, he makes me look like Mother Teresa in terms of his restraint.
What kind of things, just on that one, because I did see Spanish TV, a commentator heavily criticised for, in the after the red card, giving it the old, well, he doesn't help himself. And I think, as you said, in the context of racist abuse, that's irrelevant. But away from the racist abuse he's receiving, what kind of things does he do?
Joe, wait, it's really important before I answer that it was a Spanish journalist on co-commentary in English.
Well, do you know what? I have the clip, so rather than us talk about it, because it might be just of interest and of note here. So La Liga TV, and you'll hear Tony Padilla. He's the co-commentator, rather than me paraphrase him. Have a listen.
This really is a huge call, and it diffuses everything. So no yellow card. With a yellow card. And the second yellow means Vinicius is sent off, and this goes up a level, and this is something that will just run and run and run, Tony.
So it's the worst that could happen.
Yeah.
Because the player that is out, and that's a red card always, it's also the player that suffers from verbal abuse. So we should stand with Vinny Jr. if he suffers verbal abuse, racial abuse. But that it's never justifies that he hits Uguduro. It's Vinny's mistake. It's not a question of who's the bad one. And look at Vinny Jr. You are going to second division. So we should stand against racism always, but also we should say that Vinny Jr. is not an angel, he's not perfect. Sometimes he provokes the other teams. So every time that he's suffering verbal abuse, we should stand against racism. We should stand with Vinny Jr. But also we cannot say that he's a saint. It's always committing a lot of mistakes, and we saw it in 5 minutes. Really complicated moment, and it's been going on during all the season, situations like this one, and it explodes today here in Mestalla.
Sweet.
Joe,
go on.
Wait, because I didn't know that clip was coming. One, I want to say that when Vinicius goes behind the goal, but 20 minutes prior to that, Tony is the co-commentator, and Tony is unequivocal. Tony says, and I have audio tape of it, where he says, never, ever, and those are his words, under any circumstances is racial abuse of a player justified. Ever. He, at that stage, he doesn't mention behaviour. And in the clip you've played, if anybody wants to listen to it slowly and clearly, they may dislike mentioning the two strands, the racist abuse and Vinicius' behaviour, within the same paragraph.
Yeah.
But in no moment there does Tony say that one has caused the other. He does not say that. And previously in the match, Tony is unequivocal about there is no excuse, there can be no place for racist abuse. So, social media being what it is, people didn't pay attention to or might not have been watching because of GAA and KTN and La Rochelle, Leinster, whatever. But people have not picked up on what he said at that stage, which was unequivocal. He's a Republican, sort of left-wing, social values kind of man. And my only point about this, Joe, is if he is held out to be part of the problem, during what I think is a very complicated moment speaking in a foreign language, then I think people are missing the point. Now, what I began to say before you introduced the concept of that commentary is that in Marca, that senior journalist Carlos Carpio's column, at least 80% of it is about purging the unacceptable racism. When I moved to this country, that wouldn't have been written. Marca also carry, listen, I'm genuinely sorry if I get the number wrong, but something like a 40 bullet point educational piece for readers about what racism is, why it's unacceptable, what type of subconscious racism the reader might be guilty of. It sounds maybe infantile to a society like yours, but it is a part of the re-education of the Spanish public, which wasn't taking place 21 years ago when I moved here. Has moved, I'm sad to say, at a snail's pace, but Ancelotti speaking up, Courtois speaking out, Gaia saying, I don't like Vinicius' behaviour, but there is no, Gaia, the Valencia captain, there is no excuse for racial abuse. I want to believe that this incident, culminating months of debate, has been so disgusting, so degrading, that it can spark a different kind of debate. And equally, like I said, I don't care why white professionals come on board, whether it's out of selfishness, as long as it re-educates the thugs, the bullies, the idiots, the sheep who are like, this is a good way to put off a rival. And I'm not, a professor of philosophy. Is a person who uses racist words to put up a rival and are an outright racist in their daily life? Well, if you use racist words and expressions, you're a racist. Does that mean that you're, irredeemably lost forever? Are you an outright racist to the core? I don't know the answers to those questions, but I do believe that there are many, many hundreds of people around stadiums in Spain who are like, Vinicius can be got to, so we will try to get to him. And those people can be made to feel it's unacceptable. Made to feel it's unacceptable by their part of the stadium being closed, by their stadium being closed. Where I think the La Liga stand for the old definition of what is effective, and there's efficacy and Charles, I'm so angry. The words of you can be efficient and effective. There's an efficiency about La Liga reporting to the government body the instance of racist abuse, but it's not effective. There isn't efficacy.
Right.
And that's another giant step to be taken. Not like, we've ticked the box, it's been reported to the limit of our powers. Efficacy needs to be excuse, I made a fool of myself by struggling to find my word. Efficacy needs to be the new F word in this.
We're out of time, but that was great. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Joe.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now. Off the